Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Culture War Debates Podcast Live. This is our first pilot. We got a live studio audience for everybody who's watching at home. We're going to be bringing them up. I encourage heckling, booing, and jeering, which is probably bad news for our friend Pisco. But it's going to be fun. But we do have some serious issues to debate. And the question of today is, was the deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia just or unjust? And should the Trump administration bring him back to this country? And with that being said, I would like to throw it first to the gentleman to my right. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Pisco. I'm a lawyer. I argue on the internet from a left-wing perspective, and I think it's obvious that it was unjust. It was illegal. All right. One of the big problems that conservatives cite with immigration is the fact that it's illegal in the first place. Okay. So if you have a problem with illegal immigration on the basis of its illegality, surely you should have a problem with deporting people illegally, unless you think it was the right thing to do to break the law. Do you think it was the right thing to do to break the law? I'll ask the audience right now. Yeah. So that's just a collective. I want everyone to notice. You all said you're fine when Trump breaks the law. He admits that he broke the law, and you're cool with it. And they admit that it was against the law to do so, and they promised that they're going to do it to U.S. citizens too. You think he's just joking? You think it won't affect you? They've already arrested U.S. citizens, for 10 days without due process. They're lying about where he was near the border. They've deported U.S. children who have cancer. So don't think this won't affect you. And notice what you all just did. You all just said, yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it's just for someone to be deported illegally. Deported illegally.
All right.
So basically, just to finish off, if you're willing to say that, you're willing to say that you want Trump to be a king, that you want him to be a tyrannical fascist. And I would ask you to look yourself in the mirror and really, take a hard look. Is that what you want this country to be?
For 24
All right.
hours. For 24 hours, yes.
We also have, with his opening statement and introduction, this gentleman here.
Yeah. Nice to see you all. I'm Will Chamberlain, Senior Counsel at the Article 3 Project. So I think there are, three core reasons that the outcome here is substantively just. The first is that had the Trump administration gone through the normal process to lift a withholding of removal, this guy would have been removed 100% of the time for two core reasons. First, he was found to be a member of MS-13 in earlier court proceedings. Once that finding was found and upheld on appeal, he would be stopped from challenging that. Now that Trump has designated the guy, as MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, he's not eligible for withholding of removal anymore, so he'd simply have lost no matter what. And the second reason is that in the interim, between the time he got this withholding of removal and now, the 18th Street gang, which supposedly threatened his mother's pupusa shop, a preposterous story from the outset, that 18th Street gang is no longer effective in El Salvador, which was the basis for his supposed fear of persecution, which is why the withholding of removal was granted in the first place. So the outcome wouldn't have changed. This is what we would call, to analogize, harmless error. The second reason it's substantially just is because the guy's a wife-beating MS-13 gangbanger.
Yeah.
And who exploited our laws for 14 years. And in fact, the more that comes out about the guy, you're realizing, just what kind of person he is, threatening his wife and children, telling them that, you can't leave me because I'll kill you. Funny thing, I was reading a book about MS-13, and a different MS-13 gangbanger did say the same thing about a girlfriend he was dating. There's this sort of underlying entitlement. But substantively just obviously a very bad dude, a human trafficker, the kind of person who drives people, from Texas to Maryland who don't have any luggage. Do you think those people have free will? No, those are captives. And, we can get more into that later.
And we will. There's one more man joining us tonight to make sure that there's a little bit of chaos and humor.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I like. Well, it's Primetime 99, and I just want to say, Pisco, you are very smart, but you're still a libtard. And, but no, I agree. I actually agree with you on this because whether it was unjust or not, we got the outcome that we want. His big booty Latina is staying in the country. And we need to do this as, a lesson to these other gangbangers and Tren de Arruga adjacent people that if you come to our country and, you bring your big booty Latina, we're going to kick your ass out and keep her. So I think...
Alex, the Latina in question is a U.S. citizen.
I know, but still, she's still a big booty Latina. I'm saying it doesn't matter.
I mean, if the goal is to protect the U.S. citizen Latina from the predations of the Mandamus 13 gangbanger.
I'm saying protect even illegal or legal big booty Latinas. They carry the same weight in my eyes. I guess not apparently to you. So I'm saying, yeah, she's a legal big booty Latina, but he learned his lesson. They don't get to go back to El Salvador or wherever you get kicked off to.
And that's exactly why Alex is here.
Yes.
But we are going to be bringing up members of the audience, people who have submitted who want to join this debate, and give you guys a chance to have your thoughts heard on this matter. But I suppose the question to kick it off, simply, to either of you who wants to start, was the deportation just or unjust?
It was unjust. It was illegal. Do you think that doing
Those aren't synonyms.
Wait, so
Those don't mean the same
I
thing.
understand that, but in this context, do you think it was just for the Trump administration to do an illegal deportation? Yes or no?
I mean, in these circumstances, the outcome was just.
I'm asking if the deportation, if you think.
Well, I mean, it was mistaken, so
Well,
they've conceded that it's a mistake, right?
So was it just to do a mistaken illegal deportation?
I mean, the actual substantive outcome here is a just outcome.
No,
It's like, I don't want the administration.
Whether the outcome was just or not, is
Right.
the action, the mistaken, in your words, mistaken illegal deportation just or not?
It's mildly unjust. I actually.
So
will concede
you
that. There's a
actually agree.
reason I
So to be
had
clear,
the resolution be
you
profoundly
actually
unjust.
agree that it was unjust. To be clear, everyone here agrees it was unjust.
No.
Well, okay. So Tim, do you think that the deportation was just to do an illegal action?
See, what you're doing right there is I'm just going to say, that's not debating. To load the question with, I presume it was illegal first, now answer.
Do you
It's
agree it was illegal?
When did you start beating your wife?
Well, do you agree it was illegal? What's loaded about that?
So the issue is it a crime to make a mistake?
Not a crime. Was it illegal? Was it illegal? Yes or no?
No.
9 justices on the Supreme Court unanimously, Will and I, both lawyers, will tell you it was illegal. Will, it was obviously
Yeah,
illegal.
no, it was an illegal deportation.
It was an illegal deportation.
So hold on. You're saying that it was illegal because the Supreme Court said it was?
No.
It's emphatically the providence
Okay.
and duty of the
Was-
Judicial
was-
Department to say what the law is. That's Marbury.
Does the Alien Enemies Act supersede?
He wasn't sued under the Alien Enemies Act, or wasn't deported under the Alien Enemies Act.
Stephen Miller claims he was.
No, he absolutely wasn't. He's not a Venezuelan. The proclamation for the Alien Enemies Act only applies to Venezuelans.
Is that true?
Yes, that's true.
Say again.
Does the Alien Enemies Act apply to El
The
Salvador?
proclamation
Or
issued by the
MS-13?
president
No.
only to Tren members who are Venezuelans, by its terms, the proclamation by its terms, even assuming it were legal,
Yeah, but
would not apply to him.
Yeah, this is not an Alien Enemies Act question.
So the
So
question
the-
is,
so
do you agree it was
what-
illegal?
If the argument is the Supreme Court said it was illegal and that's your basis for it, then I agree with you. Yes.
Okay. Do you agree with the president or the executive
The thing
department?
is, everybody agrees it's illegal.
Well, just to be clear.
No, I
he
believe
just
it was
for
an
a while
administrative
said it wasn't.
error, and the issue is we're talking about the semantics of what it means to be illegal, right? So, is it illegal to smoke pot? Yes. Is it unjust? No. People can smoke pot if they fucking
Okay,
want
so
to smoke pot.
that's why I'm asking you first if it's illegal. Now you agree it is illegal, fair, right?
In the context of which, so the first thing I was trying to do was understand your view in how you're viewing what illegal means. You're saying, as a subject of law, as the Supreme Court has ruled it, we all agree the Supreme Court did in fact say it was illegal.
Correct.
Agreed.
Okay, so if it's the case that you think that this deportation was illegal, do you think it was just for the
Yes.
Trump administration to do an illegal deportation?
Yes.
Okay.
Just like I think it's just for someone to smoke pot.
Okay, so if they did the same thing to a U.S. citizen, though, obviously you'd think it's unjust.
Yes.
Okay. If they killed Kilmar Abrego Garcia, would you think it's unjust?
Yes.
Why is that?
Killing people is one of the worst crimes, in fact.
Okay,
Obama killed 4 American citizens. We fact checked this.
Wait, but you thought that was wrong, right?
Absolutely.
So then so if it's the case that you thought that was wrong, wouldn't it be wrong, for example, to put Kilmar Abrego Garcia in prison for the rest of his life without an opportunity to have a case?
No.
Okay.
You see, so let me try this real quick. You're trying to equate, say, Barack Obama, right? He extrajudicially assassinated a 16-year-old kid without charge or trial. I mean, if a dude cracks a grandma over the head with a baseball bat and kills her, I say lock that guy up. If a guy accidentally runs a woman over, then we say there could be negligent homicide. There's degrees of whether or not the crime is bad. Is it justice in some circumstances and not when a crime is... Not all crimes are solved in the same way.
I'm not alleging
They
that it's a
all
crime.
rise to the same level of retaliation.
I'm not
or
alleging that
retribution.
it's a crime. I'm saying it's illegal, and the Supreme Court found that. And right now, what we have, this is what the Trump cult does to you. This is what the Trump cult does to you.
What's with the ad hominem?
So this is what it does to you. You are defending an illegal deportation of a human being who has the right to have his case heard, the basic essence of due process.
Funny thing
And if
is
you
he
can-
actually-
if you
I mean,
deny
to
it
be-
of anybody, it will be denied of you in the course of time.
No, it won't. He's not a citizen.
So if
And he
you're
was
deported,
previously adjudicated as an MS-13 gang
that's
member.
false. And
No,
you brought
no,
it too.
it's not, it's
That's-
not.
so
There
you-
was a finding that he was an MS-13.
No, so
Absolutely.
you brought up collateral estoppel, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah.
So-
He'll be
so-
stopped from challenging it.
So of course not. So of course not. So this. So I know because I have to say a lot of these lawyers like file shipwrecked, and they get shipwrecked is a lawyer, and it's garbage. And the truth is there is no collateral estoppel here. What is the finding that the bond court hearing made?
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. I have a question.
Yeah.
If someone does something illegal, is that just or unjust?
It's sometimes unjust, sometimes just. It depends.
If someone does something illegal, should they always be held
No.
under? No. Okay, so we agree that the real question here is not whether it's just or unjust, whether we think the penalty should be severe or not.
No. So I agree. Not all illegal things are unjust. I'm asking in this case, is this illegal action by the Trump administration just or unjust? And you said it was just for the
Indeed.
Trump administration to do an illegal deportation.
Now,
And
hold
I'm
on,
going to ask you
my
why.
friend.
I'm going to ask you why.
Right. Let me answer that. So the first thing I got to say is you keep loading this as though illegal is the pretext by which something would be just or unjust, which is why I asked you, is if something is illegal, is it just or unjust?
It
Sometimes
can be.
it's
It
not.
depends.
Then you don't need to say, am I okay? Why am I okay with Trump doing something illegal? The question is the deportation.
No, I do need it because I think as a standard, right, there's a threshold here that in the main, when the government does something illegal, we're going to presume it's unjust unless you can reach some threshold. Well, think about it, right? So if this can't just be a game of we let the government do whatever we want to people we don't like. We're fearful of the government wielding power in the main because of structural reasons. There's a reason. There's a reason. For example, you believe that someone who's accused, for example, of should be given a trial, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Why is it that? Why do you think that someone who's so horrific, and if everyone agrees that this person, why should we give them a trial?
An American citizen gets a trial.
What about an illegal alien?
They don't.
So you don't think? So just to be clear, this is where we're at now. You don't think that crimes that are committed in this country by illegal immigrants that they should have trials for those crimes?
The penalty.
No, we do have. Wait. To be honest, we do have trials for. illegal
Hold
immigrants,
on. So the penalty for an illegal immigrant typically is for most who cross within 2 years is expedited removal. That means their due process is an immigration officer will determine whether or not they're here legally or illegally.
That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about
This is-
crimes. We're talking about crimes.
And yeah, so when we get someone here who like or murder somebody, why are we going to spend taxpayer dollars when the outcome is going to be you get sent out of the country no matter what happens?
Tim, so actually, a lot of times, we deal with this. We want them to be prosecuted so that they actually face a punishment instead of getting deported. So that is, we actually spend a lot of taxpayer resources on prosecuting illegal immigrants, at least in Texas.
But like, I want to dwell here for a second. The Constitution says that persons in this country get trials if they are accused of a crime before they're punished. No, it does not say that. You can read the
Well,
Constitution.
let's clarify the fact. Does it say citizens or persons?
So for example, there's different parts
Pisco,
of the,
let me ask you this, though. In the case of Abrego Garcia, do you think that that is a sweeping policy that's being used to deport mass amount of people? Or
that
is this
what is
one?
a sweeping policy?
Well, I'm just saying the pretext that we use to deport Abrego Garcia, I'm saying, do you think that that is being used right now to deport a massive amount of people, or is this an isolated incident in your opinion?
I don't think it's an isolated incident. I don't think it's relevant to the question presented, which has to do with his.
Kind of,
But I will answer it.
Well,
I
I'm
will-
just saying, few. When you make an omelet, a few eggs are going to get, cracked. I'm just saying there are going to. It sucks how
Yeah,
it
but then
is.
just bite the bullet and say, yes, it was unjust. Of course it was unjust. We don't want the government in the main unless there's exceedingly like
go back
crazy
to-
circumstances to violate the Constitution, right?
Pisco, real quick, but do you think it's going to be used in a massive way? Or
It already
this-
is. It
Well,
already
who
is.
else? But who else? What other examples
So-
do we have? I know you talk about the cancer girl, but they actually were allowed to stay. So when leftists say that they were forced to leave, they chose to go with their family.
If
They
you
were
guys-
100% allowed to stay in America. So we didn't deport a cancer person.
If you guys are stuck in your echo chambers, and again, I think that there's some of that going
Don't
on here.
insult the
I think some of
audience
goes
like
on.
that.
So,
Give me a
so
break.
if it's that case, then you wouldn't know, for example, that this U.S. citizen, there's a parent here. There's an opportunity that people have basic due process rights to see if, like, I don't know, an aunt wants to care for the U.S. citizen, or another parent has parental rights and the right to have custody over the parent
Real
or of a
quick, though,
child.
in the instance you're referring to, the mother requested the child.
So I don't know which case. There are multiple cases of U.S.
There's
citizen deportation.
two.
One of which the mother denies that's what the outcome that she wanted. But regardless, the policy that we're talking about is with respect to people who are not citizens here. And you asked if it's like a mass policy. They're already by the Supreme Court again unanimously saying that these people are entitled to due process. You guys don't think that. You guys don't think that there should be due process.
I don't think that's.
Everyone
okay.
thinks they're entitled to due process. The question is what process is due, and it's
Do you think-
extraordinarily limited in the context
Wait,
of
but
legal
Tim
immigration.
just said even in the context of criminal. So Tim just said in the context of a criminal indictment that there should not be trials for people who are here illegally. You don't agree with that?
No, I don't.
See, hold on. This is a really good example for media literacy. What he did is he is falsely framing the arguments, redirecting it. What I'm saying is there is no trial required for a crime committed by an illegal immigrant because they'll get an expedited removal before a trial can take
You're
place.
conflating an immigration hearing, which is civil, and I agree. There's no. So
Indeed.
you guys don't get confused. All right, I'm gonna teach you something.
I'm not conflating anything.
Immigration law and a removal proceeding is not a criminal matter. Okay, that's different than the criminal proceeding. Yes, I agree. You don't need trials. That's why J.D. Vance is full of shit when he says that we need trials.
I gotta stop you. You are actually making a mistake. I am aware you are asking for a criminal trial for, let's say, an illegal immigrant who committed a murder. I am arguing that we will deport that person back to their home country, and then we're not going to hold a trial for him after the fact.
So wait. So you're gonna take a murderer who committed a crime in this country. You're not gonna subject him to punishment in this country, and you're gonna send the murderer back to El Salvador just so he can cross the border again and murder someone?
Well, that's why Trump has CCOT, doesn't he?
Well, hang on. That wasn't embedded in your hypothetical there that he would go to CCOT.
You presented information to the argument that was not previously included in it.
Which was
the
what?
argument is an illegal immigrant here gets deported first.
Before he goes to trial for murder? Come on, guys.
How do
He
you
should
have
go
a
to trial for
criminal
murder.
trial for someone who's not in the country?
Wait, so this is high priority for our government to spend money on trials protecting U.S. citizens, and it's one of our common things as a turn. Guess what?
Actually, hold on. Let me give a
Wait.
hypothetical to Tim, real quick though. Tim, this is where I think you're wrong. I'm sorry. So, would you have rather had Laken Riley's murderer just deported, or are you happy that they had a trial and got convicted?
Deported.
That's crazy. So you trust Bukele? You trust this
I
El
disagree with
Salvadorian
that,
guy?
yeah.
Wait. Just to be clear, you trust
but I'm
you trust
happy
El
that he didn't
Salvador to
punish.
keep this guy in jail? This guy committed a crime on U.S. soil, and you trust El Salvador? You trust El Salvador? Yeah. Here's the problem. What happens if Bukele decides this guy goes free? What happens if they overthrow Bukele?
I got it, guys. I figured it out. We secure our border.
So in this country, there's justice for crimes, and what you're talking about is injustice. It's for the purposes of expediting something, but it's not true justice. For example,
I actually disagree with you. I think what you're saying isn't justice, because what you are doing is creating a defense for people who had no right to be here in the first place, so that taxpayers have to spend money on someone who's not going to be here after this. And if you look at the case of Abrego Garcia, this guy. What was the due process that was failed? He was supposed to get what's called a USCIS official interview.
False.
To make it, this is under the law. This is actually the
You're
codified
wrong.
law.
It's
it's in the law.
8 CFR.
I don't have my phone on me.
So it's 8 CFR.
The withholding of
24
deportation
sub
law
08
states that if an individual receives a USCIS interview that determines the circumstances of their home country has changed, they can be deported. Withholding is void.
8 CFR 224, look it up. So you go to sub F on that statute, or it's a regulation. It is not the province of USCIS to determine whether someone's going to be,
You have to go back to the immigration judge.
Yeah, you have to go to IJ judge.
Right.
You have to go to immigration judge.
It would-
No.
It would be
Pull up the
immaterial.
law on withholding of deportation, which explicitly states that a USCIS interview can determine that the circumstances of their home country has changed. I don't have my phone on me.
That's affirmatively. What we're talking. So this is the problem. This is defensive relief. And so in the immigration context, you can apply affirmatively to USCIS,
right.
or you can put before an EOIR
Then
judge.
I'll say this.
And-
I concede. Let's bring him back, and the first thing that happens when he walks in the door is they turn
so
him back
I
around.
just want to be sure. You concede that it was unjust and he should be brought back and then put in removal.
No. Stop playing
That's
games.
what you just said.
Stop playing games. I am saying, for the sake of argument, I will no contest your argument and say the end
that's
result.
pussy shit. Don't no contest an argument.
like
Actually,
it. No, I
take
think
the
it's
argument.
fair. I think it's fair.
That's you engaging in semantics to change the argument I
That's
made.
pussy shit. Why don't you actually engage with the argument? Why don't you actually engage with the argument and not say, oh, I don't know, because I'm fucking backed into a corner. Now I'm just going to say, I don't really care.
What this guy does is he plays semantic games with the ideas being presented so that he can try and finagle out of when he's backed into a corner.
So how am I backed into? So I understand the proposition to be,
Because
is the deportation unjust?
the
and
end
wait.
result-
I understand the proposition to
The
be.
end result of Abrego Garcia's return to this country is immediate expedited removal.
So I
What
heard-
the fuck is the point?
So I
Waste
heard
our
you.
fucking time.
So I just want to be clear. I understood the proposition. That you laid. I listened very carefully. You said, is it just and should it be brought back? And you just said, okay, I guess it should be. It was unjust. It should be brought back.
The
I
point
think
is, it's called a moot point when you're
the debate
arguing
proposition
something
is a
that's
moot point?
immaterial to the end result
The
of what we're
the
trying to
debate
accomplish.
proposition is a moot point. I just want to hear you say
You
that.
see, you're
again.
playing
Tim,
semantic
Tim.
games
Okay.
again. You're
Oh, we're
playing
not. I thought
semantic games
this.
again.
I also heard everyone else said this is debate. Come to the arena, debate. You guys are coping. You know you
are-
can. So
we
just
are
bite
debating.
the bullet.
Listen,
Bite the bullet.
Can I say
wait,
something?
wait.
Can
Let's
I
get- let's get Will, let's get Will.
I supposedly am debating here, right? I don't even remember that was supposed to happen. So the resolution was
All right,
supposed
let him
to be-
talk. Let him talk.
The resolution was supposed to be, is the deportation profoundly unjust, right? And there's a reason for that adverb, right? It's because there is a mild injustice that happens whenever the law is not followed, right? So, unless there is like some dramatic reason to not follow the law in a particular instance, there's usually a mild injustice. I think that the more interesting, and the funny thing is the Trump administration has conceded to this since the beginning of the filings, right? The Trump administration conceded from the outset that this was administrative error, that they should have gotten the withholding of removal lifted before they removed him to El Salvador. I don't think that's the most interesting question because it's a question that like even the Trump administration agrees to for the most part. I think the question is this a profound injustice? And I think the answer to that is obviously no, for the reasons I laid out at the beginning, right? I think I'd like to actually hear your argument for why this is a profound injustice and not merely a mild one.
And I want to make one little point though, Pisco. When it comes to Abrego Garcia, and I personally think this is an isolated incident, but even if you are right, I'll concede that I think, I ideologically, even though you and I are different on this subject, I do feel like that he didn't get his, due process. And I had to debate this on college campuses, it is hard. But in this instance with Abrego Garcia, I think it's isolated, and I don't think that it's a massive problem. That's what I think about this, but I do concede.
They go entwined. This question is like, who really cares, right? Who really cares? One guy, whatever.
Well, it's kind of like you're George Floyd. They're making this guy to be like a hero, and it's one incident, and it's bad, but he's not a hero, and he still, beat his wife. So it just kind of sucks that even though you are right in this instance, I don't want to be like the left because they say that the means, the ends justify the means, and I don't want to be like that. I don't want to break the law to get the outcome that we want.
So I want to be clear. I'm going to give you a hot take. This is worse than the George Floyd situation. This is worse than the George Floyd situation, and I'll tell you why.
Okay, wow. Yeah, one's in the chat. One's in the chat.
I don't know from
Let's let him
what
talk. This
perspective
is
that could
interesting.
possibly be right.
So-
Like, it doesn't matter how you come down on George Floyd. The valence of George Floyd is bigger on either
So
side.
I understand. So I take the assumption, and
Let him talk. Let him talk, guys.
And I do believe that George Floyd was murdered. I watched that entire trial. I think it's clear that they're
Fentanyl, but okay, go ahead. But let's let him say.
Yeah, no, you should listen to the pulmonary cardiologist, his testimony. Yeah.
Let him talk. Let him talk. Let's hear this,
Yeah.
guys. He's about to make a good point.
So-
I'm interested in this.
So this is why I do think that even though that there's a history of cop violence, not just on black people, on people of all races, whatever, and it's a problem in the United States. I think that it doesn't present the same kind of civilizational problems that are presented by what the Trump administration is doing here. What they're trying to do here is put people outside of the contours of U.S. law. We have prisons in the United States. We have prisons in the United States for the worst of the worst. We spend money on it. The reason why we need to send them to Sicat or to El Salvador is quite simply because Trump doesn't want to be hemmed in by the law. And that, when the president of the United States, when the strongest person in the country is saying things like, for example, I want to do this to U.S. criminals. I want to use it for U.S. citizens. I believe him. I believe that he wants to do that.
How about this, Pisco? You and I both know Guantanamo Bay. There are people that are being held there without due process. We're not losing sleep over that. I don't see the left. And that was done by Obama, kept that when he said he campaigned, I'm going to shut down Guantanamo Bay. Yet he still
he was wrong for it.
Derek Chauvin did nothing wrong, and he is held unjustly.
That's wrong. That's wrong. But that's wrong.
agree.
But let's just. I want to ask you guys, like, if Trump sends U.S. citizens abroad to seek caught, you'd have a problem with that, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know about that. As a different form instead of using a U.S. prison?
Yeah.
I don't know why it's any different than our private prison industry that's a scam.
So-
To send them to a prison.
This is the
both bad.
danger.
Yeah, so.
This
They're both
is the
bad.
danger. Trump is selling. Trump is testing.
And we got 2 minutes left, and then we're about to get into the debate. So go ahead.
Trump is testing this theory, and he's telling you in advance he wants to apply it to U.S. citizens. And just like Obama, one of the things I respect about Tim Pool is he's aware of the kinds of violations that occurred under Rumsfeld, under the neocons, under Barack Obama, under Trump term 1, and that very same rationale that applied to Guantanamo Bay, that applied to the deprivations of due process in like Abu Ghraib, surely that applies to Trump version 2. And I don't see a kind of exceptional circumstance in this case that would justify breaking the law.
So-
Before we go to the members, Will, do you want to take the last point?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so I think the argument that this is ultimately going to lead to U.S. citizens deportation is just a really bad slippery slope argument. I don't think that's true. I think that there's so many other remedies that are available to U.S. citizens that it's not going to happen. I think that
You want to send U.S. citizens to seek caught?
well,
Who decides? Who decides? That's the question. Do we just trust Trump and his Kash Patel to say who the terrorists are?
I
What
have
are you?
Pisco, with any sort of prison, I mean, there's levels of crime would decide.
But there's also levels of review, right? So
There is levels of
one of the
review,
reasons
but-
why Tim, I think, in good faith, is against the death penalty is he understands the propensity for courts, yes, even courts with full review, to get shit wrong sometimes. In this case, I think that you should be fearful of a purely executive discretion on who is a terrorist sufficient to make a big hole in due process.
See,
I'll say
here's
one-
where
I'll
I
say-
want to make one last point, right? And this is why I think the slippery slope argument is bad. It'd be one thing if the Trump administration was hiding that it had made this administrative error from the beginning. But from the outset, from the very first filing in court, from the first declaration, the Trump administration was like, we made a mistake. It was an administrative error. He should have had his withholding removal lifted. So, he didn't fire the guy who made the declaration, right? He made he fired the attorney, but he didn't fire.
They suspended the guy who admitted it, and
No, they suspended the attorney, but not the
And Stephen Miller is
declaration.
saying it was a mistake. Stephen Miller's
Yeah,
lying about
Stephen
the Supreme
Miller's
Court
wrong.
decision, and you agree that Trump could get him back if he wanted to.
I mean, I think
Yes,
he
absolutely.
could. I just don't. I think it's beyond the judicial power to order.
Whether it's beyond the judicial power to order, since you said it was unjust, why wouldn't you want him to right the wrong that you acknowledge?
Here's how I would have him do that, right? Like, and one of two ways: either a Zoom hearing or a hearing in the American Embassy in San Salvador,
That was-
right? You resolve the problem. You resolve the problem by just having the hearing to lift the withholding of removal.
But the Supreme Court said facilitate his release in
From-
custody in El Salvador.
Yeah,
And
they said that, and it's like I think they're acting on a rush basis. They haven't been very clear about what they mean by facilitate, and neither is Judge Zinnes, frankly. So I think the solution here is whatever while they're litigating what exactly facilitate means in this context, you just go ahead and handle the withholding of removal issue. He's going to lose on it,
And he's
that
not.
would
He's not.
resolve
First of all, so I just want to address that real quick
Yeah.
because I want to address the issues of collateral estoppel and the issues and issue preclusion. That's is a legal term of art, but for the lawyers who are eventually going to watch this, the bond hearing is only related to the issue of whether or not he's in the moment a danger to the community. It's not a finding of the court that is able to apply. And have binding precedent on any other determination. Furthermore, the basic contours of due process and collateral estoppel require there to be vigorous process where the issues were really held. They didn't have the opportunity to cross-examine any of the witnesses. An anonymous witness on two forms, one of which is like blatantly wrong and contradictory. They said they picked him up for murder, and so the issue of collateral estoppel, there's no collateral estoppel.
I mean,
here.
I think in the context of an immigration proceeding, I think it would, you can't suddenly take a criminal standard of
Okay, that's 30
Proof.
minutes, but we'll let you wrap
Thank you, guys.
it up. Yeah,
So, and then just the second issue of withholding, it's clear under the regulations and under the due process clause, you are allowed to bring up, if just as the burden of the proof is going to be on the government to show that the country conditions have changed so that Barrio 18 is like no longer a threat because Bukele is just fucking Superman or whatever, he's going to have additional opportunities to argue other withholding arguments, one of which is now that he's been identified by Bukele by name, he has a very strong argument that he's going to be actually a target of persecution prosecution by Bukele and the administration in the state, which I think is actually a stronger argument than the Barrio 18 argument.
Let's roll.
All right, guys, now let's get it on. That was our introductory debate. You guys kind of got your palate, Well, now we need the palate cleanse. You got your little taste of what tonight's going to be about. So, guys, what's going to happen is that we're going to pick people up. We're going to kind of mix it up. So first we're going to start with Donnie, Dossie. But Donnie, what's going to happen is you're going to come up here. You're going to get a minute uninterrupted to talk about whatever prompt you want. We have this prompt. We're just going to use because you're the first one. And then after you make that argument, then you're going to come up here, and that's when we're going to have the back and forth dialogue. So you got 1 minute. And then, hopefully just give us your best 1 minute elevator pitch on your topic and why you think you're right. Then you get the 4 minutes back and forth. You get to freaking argue with the most famous
And if we like
guy
you, you stay. But if you suck,
on
I'll
YouTube.
kick you out.
If I suck, I suck.
And so your 1 minute starts. Let me get the timer out. So we
Just
get
go
this going.
for it. He'll start it.
Yeah,
Okay.
ready, set, debate, or say your topic.
So this withholding of removal thing that I keep hearing about. Granted, I admit I'm not a lawyer or anything. I also, I didn't actually read the Supreme Court ruling or anything, but my understanding of the withholding of removal is this makes it illegal for them to have deported Garcia to El Salvador. It did not grant him permanent residency within the United States, and it also did not outlaw ability to deport him to another country. So I'm kind of confused on where the confusion. Okay, I get it. A mistake was made. He was accidentally deported to El Salvador. So what happens from that point? We go ahead and we bring him back. How do we bring him back? What if Bukele isn't willing to relinquish him to us? How do we go about getting him back? Are we supposed to send in the military and go take him by force and bring him back here just so that way we can detain him and deport him again anyways? None of that makes sense to me.
Yeah!
That's kind of my point.
All right, well,
Come on up, and then we can tell you why you're wrong.
I mean, that's my position too, mostly. So nice to meet you too.
Well, let's roll. I mean, what was
Sure.
wrong?
Happy to. First of all, thank you guys. I know that we disagree on stuff, but I really appreciate y'all coming here. I think it's a really important topic, due process, and so I think it's awesome for.
If I could say real quick, kudos to you, man.
Thank you.
Big balls. Come up here, go up against these three, and an entire fucking room of people that are opposing you. That's strong.
Okay, you don't need to kiss his ass. Let's go.
So I think the first, I'm going to deal in reverse order. The first thing is well, how can we actually get that done? I think everyone, if they're being honest with themselves, because you guys are honest people, should admit that Trump could, if he wanted to, get Kilmar Garcia back. He recently, as this week, said he could get him back. So we believe in terms of practicality, the president of the United States could get him back, right?
I mean, I concede he could because he does have a lot of sway, and Bukele.
So you
wants
agree
to
with
work
that,
him.
right?
He wants to work with him, but then at the same time, this also keeps Bukele in the spotlight.
Yeah, I
and
know.
He likes being in the spotlight.
But let's not talk about questions of could. Let's talk about questions of should, because I don't really think that you can make a strong argument that he couldn't.
I don't really think
Actually-
that he needs to waste his time on it.
Well,
Hang on, I just want to give Will an opportunity.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think my point is that there's Article 2 prerogatives that he actually does need to protect. And so in a world where Article 3 is sort of in this vague game of trying to order him to return him,
This is
I
a
would
good point.
say no.
So I want to give Will his credit, because it is the case. There are, as the Supreme Court held, limits, Article 3 limits on their ability to infringe on the Article 2 prerogatives. And I agree with some of these. If the Supreme Court said to Trump, hey, you have to go send in spec ops to take this guy out, I would think that that's unconstitutional for them to order that. So I do agree that there are some limits here, but that's a question of whether the court can order the remedy, not a question about what Trump could do.
Well, no, because there's an odd element to this too, and I think that you're eliding. The odd argument is that in a world where the Supreme Court is attempting to encroach on his power with vague orders, and Trump accedes to it, that sets a precedent for what the court can do going forward. And so, I mean, and since we're in this area of core Article 2 power, why I think I think Trump should do, as I said, I think the remedy here is this hearing in El Salvador. But I think Trump should resist any sort of attempt to say, oh, you're ordering me to negotiate with the Salvadoran government to bring him back. I'm not going to do that until you give that out.
We also need to address what it means to what the phrase "could bring him back" means, and this would mean that Trump would need to negotiate with Bukele to some degree. And I also believe it's fair to say that while Trump could bring him back, the resistance is going to be tremendous. Bukele is going to have to concede to his nation, I have released an MS-13 gang member because I was pressured by a foreign country.
That's right.
So
Correct.
Trump could
Also
get
a
him
good
back,
point.
but
Absolutely.
Trump's going to have to come in like,
We can't
here's
do
what
that.
we'll give you this, we'll give you that. Things that the Supreme Court can't order him to guarantee.
Bukele has like what, 90% approval in El Salvador? I've had a client from El Salvador before, and I don't want to underplay the problem
Because
that
he's
gang.
hard on them.
What's that?
Because he's hard on crime and he's hard on gang.
So I want to be clear. Like my client that I once had, he was absolutely a victim to the gang violence. It was endemic and it was just unlivable in El Salvador. So I don't want to underplay the degree to which gang violence matters. It absolutely does. But he is not. His approval rating, is to the max. The notion that he would face some kind of humongous
At the
pushback.
very second that he softens on that, his approval rating's going to go down.
You don't think he's like, okay, we gave it back because we want to make a good relation with the president? That's not going to affect his approval rating such that it's going to. But come on, this is all a joke. If Trump wanted him back,
Pisco, I want to do some Socratic dialogue
Yeah,
with
go
you
for it, go
because
for it.
you did a lot
Yes, I
earlier.
did, yes, go for it.
So let's do some Socratic dialogue. Imagine a different hypothetical. Let's imagine a world where the United States had an illegal member of La Cosa Nostra in detention.
Yep.
And somehow he had managed to acquire withholding removal from an immigration judge. Maybe that information got hidden about him being in La Cosa Nostra, whatever. Okay, he got a withholding of removal to Italy.
so like Italy, yeah.
Okay, the Italy hypothetical. And then,
That's 4 minutes, Donnie. Dude,
Let's.
you
Any final thoughts before
yeah,
we
but
go?
Donnie, you spent a minute of
questions,
it
good
kissing Pisco's
Yeah,
ass.
I shouldn't be kissing his ass. I was just trying to talk about, I'm impressed that he got up here, but at the
I
same time,
respect it.
he's fucking
Well,
wrong.
we're impressed
all
that
around.
you're here,
That's
too.
where I'm at.
But I do agree. I do tremendously respect you being here, man. This is fantastic.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you. Yeah, we do appreciate it. Okay, now, guys, obviously, no, thank you, Donnie. Great job. And so, guys, you're going to be able to come up here. So try to interject a little bit. I know, Donnie, it's tough being the first one, so don't beat yourself up. You actually did a good job. Thank you. You're the virgin. We just, you took our virginity. So thank you. Well, Alex Jones, we're about to get into Alex Jones, but it's funny because we're getting heckled by. Let's be real, guys. This is a sausage fest, it is. But we do have a few ladies here. So next up, I want one of those beautiful ladies from the audience to come on down. So do we have a lady that wants to come up here? Do we have a lady? Yeah, come on. Come on. Yes, come on. Get up there. You have to come up. Yeah. If you're here, guys, you're susceptible to being chosen and get up there. So just say anything. Just come up for a minute. If you suck for the minute, you get kicked off. You don't have a choice. Just come up here. Don't be scared. You're going to go viral. You got Tim Pool.
Let's try it. Let's just for the sake of
Oh
time.
my
come on.
gosh. Okay, well, if you're going to be a chicken, bok. Well, listen, you came here, you put on that dress, you wanted to be seen. Let's see it.
Let's grab who we have.
All right, let's go with somebody that's different. Is John Gordon here? We got a John Gordon in the audience? No, okay.
He wanted to be here.
What about Connor York? Do we have a Connor York in the audience? All right, no. What about a Sam Lipton? Do we have a Sam Lipton in the audience? None of that. Is there anybody that's liberal or has a different viewpoint than us that wants to come up here?
Well, it's different, but it's
Okay, well then you come
let's
up
get
here.
it.
What's your name?
Stork is what people call me.
Stork. Okay. Did you submit? Did you do an official submission? Okay,
did.
I'll find it. So.
Well,
you're-
go for it.
You got your 1 minute.
Let him deal the timer and let's see what you got.
Yeah, if I can get it in before he gets the timer going. Okay, so I believe he is slightly wrong. I believe you are mostly correct. And I believe all of this is a fact that they denied him his Sixth Amendment right to a speedy trial when he was denied essentially all of the processing that would have been needed when he had the stay of deportation. So he should have been sent to another place. In addition to that, most of immigration is actually screwed up because we have not filed a writ of mandamus against the federal government for not processing all of these people who are stuck in immigration limbo for 8, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, and they should be doing their job and getting them the hell out of the country.
I think.
Come on down. Take a seat.
Come on down.
Yeah,
I
take a
don't.
seat.
Sixth Amendment doesn't apply. It's not a
I don't
criminal
think the
punishment.
Sixth Amendment applies.
So it's not a Sixth Amendment
Because
issue.
it's a civil removal.
And you can't get a writ of mandamus. Number one is these judges are executive branch officials. So
You
if
can get a federal writ of
you sure
mandamus.
can't get rid of a mandamus against executive branch officials, but right now they're all under Trump, and so if
Yes.
Trump could just order them to do whatever you want the writ of mandamus to do,
That's
and-
democracy.
Yeah, but all I mean is to say is I think that this is properly understood as a due process issue.
If the the writ of mandamus was actually filed under the previous administration, then they would be obligated to do what it is they need to do.
That sounds like it's the Article 3 judges encroaching on the executive branch prerogatives.
Yeah, I think it actually, and in this context, it probably would be because we actually, this is, like, I agree. Yeah, there's an Article 2 prerogative to manage immigration and enforce immigration laws. You can fail to enforce to such a degree that it would be like mandamusable by somebody, but then there's all sorts of like other questions.
I want to cut a deal real quick with Democrats. I will advocate for the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia to this country for his hearing if we also simultaneously get a hearing on the extrajudicial assassinations Barack Obama committed.
Wait, let's talk about that.
The same thing, actually. So, have a writ of mandamus for it.
So let's talk about that, because you might think, and I understand this point, like, first of all, he was a U.S. citizen, right? That's number one. And he was killed. Al-Awlaki, right? Is that what you're talking about?
So Anwar al-Awlaki is a great example, but Abdul Rahman is a better example.
Okay.
Abdul
Talk about that case.
Abdul Rahman is was a 16-year-old American citizen, was not a part of any terror organizations. The Obama administration ordered a drone strike on a civilian cafe in Yemen, a country we're not at war with, blowing it up, killing a bunch of people, including him, and they've admitted to it. I would like, and I don't think you necessarily disagree with me. That's why I said Democrats. I'm not directing it at you. I know that if I went to Democratic politicians and said, you see this as an injustice, I believe that in the end the courts will prevail as it pertains to Abrego Garcia. So I'm willing to say, okay, let's spend that money, but you got to give me something.
Yeah,
let's have justice. Obama goes to prisons.
The only reason that I would say that's a problem is I believe there's a statute of limitations on what it is you can file a writ of mandamus for. And
Is there a statute of limitations on murder?
I don't think there is in this case, but when you're talking about military actions or something like that, there may.
But he's not talking about specific writ. He's just saying in general.
A writ of mandamus, you sue the government essentially for inaction, and that's what the problem is. We have to.
But he's not talking about a particular remedy. He's saying I'm willing to publicly support X in exchange for Democrats giving.
And so I will also concede that there's probably, and you guys, the lawyers, probably know this better than me, some kind of immunity Obama has where he's going to say this was a military strike with intelligence. We did not intend to kill an American, but we did. So he may have some immunity from criminal prosecution.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to win a.
No, that's fine. I think you can still get wrongful death or something like that.
I mean, he probably has like the president has absolutely. I mean, you would have like a civil suit against the government.
You could. They tried it.
Unfortunately, I don't know if he has any surviving family members left because they also killed them.
Indeed. No, but my argument in the long form is actually impeach him, convict him, and then now that he's no longer immune, you go after him.
But the court has already, so in the Trump versus United States case, which I totally disagree with.
Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Impeach him first.
Yeah.
Convict him in the impeachment.
Yeah.
Which he's no longer immune to the murder.
So the Supreme Court specifically rejected that impeachment judgment clause argument in Trump versus United States. So there's a couple arguments. So one was the inherent structure of the Constitution makes it that we have certain degrees of absolute immunity for core executive acts that are part of your core executive powers. But there was an argument additionally that Trump said that, I'm not immune under those theories, or alternatively, I'm immune until you impeach and remove me. That's under the impeachment judgment clause, but the Supreme Court unanimously held that was not the case. So you don't need to impeach someone to trigger criminal immunity and remove them. That's been rejected. But it's a good question. Would I support a hearing that looks at the executive power and its use on U.S. citizens when they get killed? Absolutely.
All right, that's 4 minutes. So, Stork, thank you.
Thank
Anything you want to say before you go? All right, give it up for Stork. Now, guys, when you come up, you got 1 minute. Make sure to get on the mic. Okay, now this next guy.
Why don't we just have them, if we don't know, like some people did or didn't show up, why don't we have them raise their hands and then see who is prepared to come on?
Okay, well, I know this guy's here because this guy's insane. I love this guy. No. I want to call up David Tiny Flora. So, David, come on down. Tiny, it's your turn. Come on down, Tiny.
Oh, he's coming.
Tiny, come on. Yeah, give it up for Tiny. He's not exactly that tiny, I'll tell you that much. The man's huge. He's built like a damn refrigerator. Look at him. Come in here, sir. Now get up on that mic. You know how to get up on things. Come on. We want to hear you. Maybe make it taller. Damn.
You can pick the mic up and take it with you.
Damn. All right, you got 1 minute.
Get up on that thing for you, Alex. $20.
No, I'm not gay. I don't play that way. Maybe Pisco.
$20, bro.
Yeah, well, I'm worth a lot more. I'm a pimp on a blend, dude. You know what I mean? I don't need $20. But let's. You got 1 minute. What do you want to say, Tony?
All right. So what I wanted to discuss, you guys actually touched on it briefly.
Sorry. Just get closer to the mic. Yeah.
Hold on.
So what I wanted to discuss, and you guys actually talked about it or touched on it briefly, was actually the, sale of U.S. citizens to private prison industry in the United States, and how that would be any different than selling U.S. citizens to CCOT, for example. I believe that there's already a precedent that's set in the United States where we do pass or sell inmates along, from my personal knowledge working as a corrections officer for a few years. And I believe that it would be as simple as creating a territory or creating CCOT, creating a territory within CCOT that is ran by the BOP.
I think it's a wonderful question.
All right,
and
sit
so
down.
for those who didn't hear, he asked, what about the comparison to private prisons, the fact that we outsource and contract private entities to take on the responsibilities of the government, specifically with incarceration of individuals, both for crimes and immigration.
But Pisco, I want to say, I'm more surprised that a guy with prison tattoos was that eloquent. I mean, I
Very
can't
eloquent.
believe that. Where did that?
Wait, are
where
you
did
in
that-
MS-13?
Where did you come
Sorry,
from?
I'm seeing those.
Oh,
knuckle
yeah,
tattoos.
He's got the skull cane. He's got the marijuana leaf. I mean, damn, dude.
That's so funny.
That's gangster.
That's the
as
M,
hell.
right?
It's a great question.
The underside's actually the fireman's prayer.
Oh, that's wonderful.
How about that?
Yeah, but you do have a weed flower on your arm, though,
True,
right?
that's the M.
Most
That's
definitely.
the M.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. And talk into the mic. We want to hear you, Tiny. Okay, your clock starts
Yes,
now.
sir.
So yeah, go
It's a
ahead. Sorry,
fantastic
Pisco.
thing to say, because I think it's all fours. It's exactly the comparison. Bukele is being used as a contractor, and that plays into my argument and the argument of the plaintiffs, which is Bukele is not exercising the sovereign power of El Salvador by keeping Abrego Garcia in detention. He is being contracted by the U.S. government to hold him. Now I know there's
But
an
that's just
argument.
not true,
There's an
though.
argument that they're only paying money for the Venezuelans. That's all a fugazi. It's all a lie. Obviously he's working at the
Wait,
behest of the U.S.
Hold
government.
on, more Socratic dialogue.
Go for it. Go for it.
If under normal circumstances, Joe Biden had sent back a Salvadoran gang member,
Yep.
illegal alien, to Bukele, right? And say there was some financial arrangement even between Bukele,
Yeah.
not necessarily related to this particular prisoner, but there was a financial arrangement. Is then suddenly, if there's some problem, is he able to demand that he be sent back to the United States?
So I think that there's an existing contractual relationship, an existing constructive custody, you would argue, that this person is continually to be, it's not like one and done event. It's why is this person in, I don't actually think he's in Sikot anymore. I think they transferred him
they
out
transferred
someplace else. But why is he in custody in the first place? Is he being in custody because he's being charged with a crime by Bukele? Is he being, why is he in fact in prison? And the truth is, or in wherever he is, it's because he's acting at the behest of America, and everyone kind of knows it. And the fact that we all
think
kind of
that's
acknowledge.
false.
Well,
I don't think that's true
I
at
have
all.
a question for you, Pisco. What is the legal process for imprisoning someone in El Salvador?
I don't know. What is that process?
Me
It
neither.
seems very.
We
I
don't
wonder
know.
why you're
It
bringing
seems
up a
bare
foreign
bones.
country's criminal justice system for their own citizens.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking about the internal domestic process in El Salvador?
Yes.
Yeah, it's at the whims of the dictator.
So, are there other dictators that you're concerned about in other parts of the world
100%
that
I am. Yes,
that
I am.
You don't frequently debate about?
Well, I don't frequently debate about it when it.
I don't think we have to be
US.
so chauvinist to assume that every country's, process system being different, especially El Salvador, which has had 30 years of gang violence, for them to be like, no, sorry, you have gang tattoos, you're going to jail.
But I don't even think we need to argue that, because I think that there is a moral worldview difference between us, and I don't mean this disrespectfully.
Sure,
in
sure.
that my view is, hey, we're America. We take care of America. If El Salvador's being shitty, I mean, that's El Salvador. And this guy's their citizen in their country. If they decide to put him in prison, that's not our fucking problem.
Yeah, but you're ignoring the process of how he got there and how. Yeah.
It's so again, if I asked this of Christy Nome, can we just give him his hearing and be done with it, because we know that in the end we are correct? And her response was, it's out of our jurisdiction now anyway.
So I have a question
Yeah.
to kind of bring it back to what we were discussing here, right? I think we kind of went a little further.
Sure.
So we already run programs very similar here in the United States,
Sure.
like with the 187G program. Sheriff Chuck Jenkins up in Frederick County, Maryland, has been running that for many years now, and has been very successful prior to the Trump
In the United
administration.
States, right?
Very correct.
I agree.
But my point is, those inmates, he is being compensated by the United States government to house them in a special wing. His deputies are deputized as federal marshals or
Correct.
federal agents. Why would it be any different if we rented out a wing in CCOT and sent inmates there? No differently than what we do now in
Well,
America.
two things. One is, I think that your description of that relationship is completely correct. I think that's exactly what's happening with Bukele there, in the sense that, yes, the U.S. government is contracting a party to enforce immigration law, but now the reason why it's different is The deprivation for which due process applies is the physical removal from the country. And so when you deport him to another place, you've now done the deprivation for which there is due process. And so that's my answer to that is, in theory, I guess I wouldn't have a problem with the law of contracting like some foreigner. I don't like it, but legally I don't know if that's a problem. But
That's it. That's your time. All right.
I just want to point out real quick, this guy right here is a Maryland man with
Maryland
knuckle
tattoo.
tattoos.
Yeah.
Love it.
That-
What do you do for a
Love it.
living, Tiny? What do you do? Do you mind saying? What do you do?
No comment.
Damn. That means he sells weed, is what that means. All right. Now, actually, I got some information that, even though it is a little bit of a sausage party, that I think we have a lady with the courage to step up to the microphone. So with that being said, yeah, I'm okay. I said lady. What I
That's gratuitous.
now, with all that being said, let's welcome the one, the only Indoctrin! Give her a round of applause, guys. Come on.
Thank you. Oh my God. It is such a fucking sausage party. Also, I want to say you're pissing me off, Pisco, but
Yeah.
I'm going to try to say this without getting angry. Okay. If Kilmar comes back.
Talking to the mic. Sorry.
Sorry,
Get real close to the mic.
Can you hear me?
pick it
Hold
up.
up. Take it off, because we're recording this, so we can't use you if we can't hear. So talking to the
you.
mic.
Thank you, T-Bone. So, all right. First of all, this guy's name is Kilmar. Like, he sounds fucking crazy. Like, it's frightening as fuck. Okay.
I mean, he is like just demonstrably.
Uninterrupted. Let her talk.
Are you from Maryland?
No.
Okay, so I was born and raised in Maryland. Shout out to Maryland. Woo! Shout out to the East Coasters in here. All right, let me tell you something about MS-13. All right, if this guy comes back, he's gonna be beating his wife, beating others, and back to the bullshit. All the trafficking, everything he's up to that, is alleged, he's gonna be back on his bullshit and even bigger. I don't think, I'll speak for myself, but I don't think my community wants or desires to bring those characters back. We are extremely happy for their deportations, and we are extremely happy that he can't come back, that he's trapped in El Salvador.
All right,
Grab the seat, grab
come
the
on,
seat.
Indoctrin. Great job.
This
Sit
is.
down.
I was waiting for a question like this because this strikes at the moral perspective, not the fact-based legal perspective. And so there's this air of, we can't deport people like this because it's a slippery slope that results in injustice elsewhere. That strikes at a procedural, legal, slippery slope, a lot of things. But it doesn't ask the moral questions a community wants answered. In that, if this was the 1800s, they'd have thrown this motherfucker out of
They'd have hung
town.
him. He would have been lynched.
And if he came back,
He would have been lynched.
they would have fucking killed this guy if he came back. I don't want that to happen to anybody. But the point is, the way communities treat people who wrong them, there is a question there. So I appreciate what you're asking
we
about the
hate
moral
it.
question. What's the answer there?
We
Yeah.
hate it, okay? Go ahead, no.
So you brought up the lynching. I just want to say, because I think that's an interesting point. I think there is a moral dimension to procedural questions, but I'm going to ignore it for the purpose of this because I do think that, I don't know if you guys ever watched The Hateful Eight. It's my favorite Tarantino movie, and one of the characters says that's frontier justice, and that's frontier justice. And the reason why we don't agree with that on a moral dimension is you're just as likely, you're likely to be wrong sometimes. And so here's my question for you: is Kilmar Abrego Garcia innocent until proven guilty of the crimes that the media is alleging him of doing?
He doesn't get to be judged by those terms because he's not a citizen of the United States.
So I just want to be clear. Do you believe that either it is the case or it ought to be the case that non-U.S. citizens should not have trials for the crimes they're accused of?
I think that what you're referencing is like a waste of our money. So we should not be, there's no reason to bring him here, do all this bullshit. We've paid enough in Maryland, okay?
So is the answer no, you don't think non-citizens should get trials for the
No.
crimes they're
That's
accused
a
of?
loaded question. It's
Why
a
is it
loaded
loaded?
question.
Why is it loaded?
Because the issue is, should somebody who lives in this country, permanent resident, versus an illegal immigrant adjudicated as MS-13, whose penalty is deportation. Right, here's the point. If someone comes here and breaks the law, and the end result is going to be deportation, how do we have a trial for them when they're gone? Why force them to stay here if we're going to remove them anyway?
These are people who hate America, hate our community. They hate abiding by the law. They hate us. They hate U.S. citizens, and they just mooch and mooch and mooch while literally terrorizing our community and tearing us apart. They're like agent provocateurs.
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you believe that an illegal immigrant should get their due process? That doesn't mean jury trial. It means the standard legal process that is fair under the law for determining whether they're a citizen.
No, I mean, yeah. I think no, in that the original crime being that they came to this country illegally.
But that's what I'm asking you. The due process I'm asking if you would accept is a man is walking down the street, the cops stop him. The due process here is we must determine if he's a citizen or not. Should they do that?
They should determine if he's a citizen or not.
Under what process? Who do you trust to determine who's a citizen?
Border Patrol. I actually got pulled over by Border Patrol recently, and they did a great job.
Here's the problem. When you put a hole in due process, this is why I don't agree with these categorical exceptions. Once you put one hole in due process, now the government, just by their own discretion, is going to put everyone they don't like in that hole.
If you have nothing, no. If you have nothing to hide, you should have no.
That's classic neocon language.
What the fuck
classic
are you
neocon
talking about?
language.
If you have
classic
nothing to
Patriot
hide,
Act language.
Being pulled over by Border Patrol shouldn't be frightening.
What makes America great, right, is our structure, our Constitution, our way of life. One of the people will often bring up to me the Carter Page FISA warrants that the Department of Justice got on Carter Page. You guys remember this, the Russiagate stuff, right? Those Carter Page warrants were wrongfully obtained. And you guys cared about them. Why do you care about them? You care about them because you don't want the government to intrude. This isn't even a matter of detention. It's not a matter of execution. I assume that you care. It's called a rhetorical. It's called, hey, dipshit. It's called a rhetorical question.
Bro, you gotta
dipshit.
come up.
Hey, dipshit. It's called a rhetorical question. Hey, dipshit. It's called a rhetorical question. You ever heard of it? Wait. So yes or no? Have you ever heard of a rhetorical
Don't call
question?
him a dipshit.
Dipshit. But yes or no? Have you heard of a rhetorical question?
Wait. We will ask you to come up because
that's 4 minutes for indoctrinate. But
let's
wrap up.
if you've got a little bit more because we kind of went off. Just if you.
No, seriously though, what do you say, Pisco, to the communities in Silver Spring, Gaithersburg, these communities who have for the last 40 years been inundated with these illegal immigrants and dreamers?
Freedom. This is what I say. I say freedom isn't free. Every time we give a trial every time we give a trial to someone who's an accused rapist, an accused murderer, it costs the state and the people of Maryland a lot of money. But the reason we do that is when we don't, we live at the discretion. When we don't, we live at the discretion of the state, and you shouldn't be government bootlicking shills that just trust the government to do everything you want.
And while I can agree with the government shill stuff, what I will say is it's the only thing I heard there was it's not in my fucking backyard, so I don't give a shit.
That is bullshit. That is complete bullshit.
Bro,
that's a cop out.
Bro, I'm gonna tell you guys something I shouldn't fucking say. I've got property in the area with MS-13 now trying to occupy it. I had to fucking contact the FBI. And so I've got these liberals who don't live here, who don't know that there are gunshots, that there are people running scared, and they're saying, bring this guy back. Now, I'm a pause. I don't want false warrants or bullshit. The reason why I asked about due process under the law is for an illegal immigrant, if they're stopped, like usually you got stopped by CBP, the law as it is now is an officer makes a determination if they're a citizen or not, and they have expedited removal, I believe, within 2 years. And I was talking to Myron Gaines about this the other day. He was an ICE agent. And he says, often we lock them up, get a plane, they send them home.
But that's a great point, Tim. Tim,
that's the due process.
This is a great point.
Real quick, we don't need a criminal trial after we say get the fuck out.
Wait.
Exactly.
When did you hear me? I just want to be clear. When did you hear me say that we need a trial? In fact, I went and I said, J.D. Vance is a fucking liar because he says we're asking for trials. What you just talked about, this proceeding in front of a judge, and really for expedited removal, it's not. It doesn't. It's usually like not even default a judge. It's just an immigration officer.
Agreed. That's right.
We're not talking here about a ton of due process.
And I agree with you on that.
So all we're talking about here are minimum standards. They didn't even, they didn't give them notice before they left. They didn't give them. They're trying to say that
you're
they can give
saying
24-hour
freedom isn't
notice.
free, but you want them to stay here on our dime.
So it's a costly, right? Having freedom is
What the fuck?
having.
Nobody wants
You
to
understand
pay
this?
that.
You understand this? Freedom is costly. The freedom of speech is costly. The freedom to bear, have guns.
make El
is
Salvador
costly,
pay.
Right? So, yeah. So. But what is Trump doing? Trump is not making El Salvador pay. Trump is paying El Salvador. Trump is paying El Salvador when really he is entitled under our own law, right? Congress passes a law. Congress passes the Immigration Nationality Act, and it says we're going to bind the executive to these rules. What good is our country? What good is our society if we don't follow the rules we set for ourselves? Surely we must follow the law.
I want to say something, and I'm curious to hear Will's response. Let me say something, and then I want to hear Will's response to this. I love the founding fathers. They were brilliant people. They put together
Gay.
I think, the best government we've seen. But
Love another man, gay.
now here's the issue. Here's the issue. They certainly did recognize emergency powers. They certainly did recognize when the executive would need to take actions that were considered probably extreme. We have seen instances throughout history. The challenge I see now is determining when we are facing an existential crisis and whether or not we are going to be like the Catalonians sitting on our hands like anarchists being like, well, we're being wiped the fuck out by invaders, but let's not do anything because we have a process to deal with. Or if we're going to step to attention and say, I understand the moral qualms with this process, how things are being handled, but holy shit, how do we deal with narco gangs, cartels, etc., when they're actively killing people, they're invading our homes? And so the question is, at what point do these platitudes of democratic society, and I don't mean I want this to happen, my question is legitimately, at what point do we have to say, holy shit, the system failed because we have been invaded?
Okay. Well, Alex, I'm going to answer his question, then you can start. Okay. So the answer is that the Constitution provides that flexibility, right? Like the due process that we're actually talking about here in all this context isn't really constitutional. It's statutory. The withholding of removal is a grant by statute. The Convention of Torture comes from a treaty, but it ultimately is implemented by statute. Congress can change the law and change what due process is entitled to. And if they're
Sorry, real quick.
Get off your ass and
real
pass a
quick
law.
to interject.
Yeah.
I hear this a lot, but it is not getting to the core. We know Congress doesn't fucking work. We know that we have a two-seat majority.
Too bad. We have a republic, not a dictatorship.
And I'm not advocating for one. I'm telling you that at a certain point, people start shooting motherfuckers. Because when the people who live in Maryland are like, MS-13 has shot a child in my neighborhood, they're not going to wait.
That's not what they're voting for. They voted for Van Hollen. They voted for.
You are misunderstanding.
They voted for Van Hollen. They voted for Van Hollen.
You are misunderstanding.
Dude,
my
the
point.
Dreamers voted for Van Hollen. Okay?
Yeah. So you want rule by minority? You guys want rule by minority government? I mean, that's crazy.
Let's pause. I am not prescribing anything. I am describing something. Right now, Congress cannot answer these questions for anybody, nor are the courts, nor is the executive branch. You've got people split massively across this country, near 50-50, ready to tear each other's heads off. And the idea that Congress will change something is a pipe dream.
Well,
I'm not saying I want something to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm saying what happens.
I mean, this is the reason. I mean, we might actually have a different interesting debate about the Alien Enemies Act at this point, right? Because this is where I would come back and say what Trump is doing to the Alien Enemies Act is right and just. The courts are overreaching, and so Trump should continue.
But ignore the courts.
Well, I mean, at a certain point, the ignoring and defying the courts is something that's been done historically.
So if the Supreme Court says you can't do this Alien Enemy Act invocation is invalid, you would say, Trump, you should disobey that.
Depends.
Yes.
Depends on how depends on the reasoning of the Supreme Court.
If they say the president, we don't get to change your facts, just like with the Texas. I don't know if you read the.
I read that Texas opinion.
So,
if they use that logic, I actually think that should be defied. I don't think that the Supreme Court should have the authority to determine what a war is. I think that's such an obvious encroachment on.
So the answer is Trump should defy the Supreme Court.
On that question, yeah.
He should. I am at the point where when Democrats called for packing the Supreme Court, I agreed with them. When Democrats arrested lawyers, I agreed with them.
Bullshit. What bullshit? You agreed with the Dems back in the court. Show me that.
No.
Show me that clip.
Whoa.
Show me that clip. I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
When the Democrats said we have 13, 13 federal, what are they called? Districts? They're not districts, right?
There's federal circuits?
There's 12 in federal circuit.
And there's only 9 justices. They said we need to add 4 more. I said, fuck yeah, we do when Trump wins, baby.
Oh, but that's not what you said. That's not what you
Okay,
said.
all right,
That's not what you
indoctrinate,
meant. That's not
guys.
what you
my point.
Indoctrinate. Before you go, how did George Floyd die? Will you tell him?
George Floyd. Oh my God, this is awkward, bro.
I know, because you're an African American. How did he die?
This is awkward also because
How did he die?
he overdosed. Listen.
Hey, no, he didn't. No.
Guys,
So-
listen, wait.
So to be clear, no, I want to address this.
Let me just say this. It's awkward because I stand here also known as the only black woman watching Timcast.
Yeah.
Wait a second. No. I
I'm
just
gonna
wanna-
tell you something, okay? This guy was a fucking menace to society.
So when you overdose on opioids, do you struggle for life like this?
have you ever seen
can
a tweet?
Google.
Have you ever been to Baltimore?
So to be clear,
What the fuck are you talking about? You never seen a tweaker? Where do you live?
Guys, wait. He had meth in his system too.
So
called a speedball.
I encourage you. I encourage you to listen to the testimony of Dr. Tobin, who was the pulmonary cardiologist in that case. He was incredibly convincing, and it was the agonal breaths. And when you die of a dose like that, it's like you're falling into a sleep. You're falling into a sleep. It's not like you're struggling for your life like he was. Yeah.
I just want to say, Derek Chauvin showed up after Floyd was already on the ground and engaged in a hold that he was trained to by the Minneapolis Police Department.
Garbage.
And the defense. The prosecution actually argued on the continuum of force he was entitled to use more force than he used.
No, they didn't.
Yes, they did.
No, they didn't.
Yes, they did.
I watched the whole trial.
They said.
I watched the whole trial. I watched the whole. So wait, so to be clear, were they justified if they wanted to shoot him in the head?
No.
Why not?
Taser.
So would you say that
He's
application was
delusional,
deadly
guys.
force?
I know.
What the kneeling on the neck and the neck area?
Yeah. Okay. So after George Floyd stops struggling for his life because he's dead,
Yep.
is the
Thank
application of force still justified after he's literally devoid of life?
Yes.
So when he's no longer, he could have. You're saying it was justified to use that hold indefinitely. Is that right?
I certainly didn't say indefinitely.
I'm asking you the question.
No,
Would they be
let me
justified to
answer.
use that hold
Let
indefinitely?
me say this. I certainly never said indefinitely.
I'm asking.
But let me just stress, we're talking about kneeling on somebody after the fact. You didn't know what was going on. You showed up after the fact. And I will say this. There's, of course, degrees on a continuum use of force. Chauvin showed up. He was already on the ground.
Don't
He
weasel.
applied a hold that
Answer
he
the
was
question.
trained to do.
Answer the question.
I would argue it is fair to get him on some kind of negligent charge.
Oh, so he did do a crime.
All right, next.
He just said it. He just said it. He just said you should get him on a negligent charge.
What I love
That's a
about
crime.
this guy is
That's a
that
crime.
he will take any morsel he can get and turn it into
Wait,
the fucking
you
apocalypse.
just said, right? You
Hey,
just said,
but you
wait,
know this.
wait,
Hey, since you are an attorney, you know that he has what is called qualified immunity. So
That's
that
for
he
civil
can't-
matters. That's for civil. It's not for criminal. That's for
Why did the
damages
guy-
cases and civil cases.
Why did the guy who
Is
simply
that
held
true?
back the crowd go to
you don't
prison?
have qualified immunity as a
Honest-
cop?
honest-
Qualified immunity applies to civil damages cases, not to criminal matters.
Why did the man who was simply holding back the crowd go to prison?
Wait, no. Answer my question. Don't weasel out of it. All right. Don't weasel out of it. You just said you agree. First of all, you agree that you should have charged Chauvin with the crime. You just said it, right?
Oh, that question is pussy shit.
Wait.
That question is pussy shit.
Yeah.
Bro, you want to
All right, guys,
Yeah.
we need to bring
Say that to
somebody
me, I'll say
new
it back
up.
to you.
All right, we got to indoctrinate. Get your ass off the stage.
Okay,
thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. That guy, the guy in the beanie, come up. That's been going crazy.
We're enjoying ourselves.
Come on down.
We fist bump.
Yeah, you come on down. Hurry up, dude. You got 1 minute.
What up?
Guys, we only have a certain amount of time
All right.
left, so we need to get this show on the road so we can get as many people up here to debate. So go ahead. You got 1 minute.
So I don't understand why you're arguing to people in a community that they should bring criminals back into it. Like you argue things that you don't possess, like a moral dimension. Like you don't give a fuck about America. You're on the side that kills children, 50 million babies in the last 50 fucking years, 325,000 children fucking sex trafficked, fucking 50,000 little girls had their because of the way your party fucking votes. You're leading us to a path that only leads in violence, and I want to know fucking why.
Yeah. So
Sit down.
in the industry, we call that a Gish gallop. So you just raise a bunch of different issues that are not topical: abortion, trans issues, and basically you're doing anything, right? And I can tell to distract from the issue at hand, which is this just and should it be brought back? Should it be brought back?
I want to point of order. Gish gallop does not apply when we actually tell him he gets 1 minute unfettered to make
Yeah,
his
to
point.
whatever.
Well, it could still. Wait, you can still get your minute.
He
but
doesn't
you still get.
understand.
You still get your. You still get your minute. But I'm just telling you, you're all over the place. All right, so try to stay focused. The issue isn't. So, would you agree that Kilmar Abreu Garcia has the right to a presumption of innocence of the people who are accusing him of crimes? Yes or no?
Why are you continuing
Will you
to
answer the
argue
question?
positions that will bring society to violence?
So do we? Should there be a presumption of innocence? Yes or no?
For an illegal alien? No, he's
Okay.
not fucking innocent.
So,
He's here illegally.
why-
Deport him. Why do you want American citizens to pay more fucking money to bring him back to deport him again? That's fucking retarded.
Should U.S. murderers get trials?
United citizens do.
should-
You like
should
if
they-
you're an illegal alien, you
Bro,
fucking don't. The due process
down.
is:
Hey,
are you a
hey,
citizen?
hey,
no.
hey.
Okay, get the fuck out.
Calm the fuck down.
No,
all right?
don't tell him to calm down.
Calm
Let
down.
him get
Yeah, I'll tell him to
jacked
calm
up.
down. I'll tell him to calm down. I'll tell
We
him to
love
calm
the
down.
passion, but we'll turn it.
You look like you're about to
Pump
blow
it up.
fucking gas.
Pump it
You look
up.
like you're
Pump
gonna
it
blow
up.
down to like an
Don't
8-year-old.
listen to those libtards or that libtard. Don't listen to them.
I grew up with a loud family, so 8 or 7
Just
is
to be
my
clear,
regular.
we have a constitution. We should follow it. That's what being American means. We should follow the fucking
then the
constitution.
fucking Biden administration shouldn't have let 20 fucking
Whataboutism?
million illegals in.
Whataboutism? What about?
Wait.
So should we follow the Constitution or not, sir?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So if the Constitution, so you just said he just said we should follow the Constitution. If the Constitution says that these people do get due process rights, should we follow that?
So the Constitution.
Yes or no?
No.
So you don't think we should follow the Constitution when you decide?
Yes.
How about asking
Let
me why on my opinions instead of just fucking assuming like
No,
every
no.
fucking midwit leftist does?
This is a lot. So he said we should follow the Constitution, and then the next thing I asked him, I said, if it says that these people should get rights under the Constitution, should we follow? They says no. So explain that.
And so let me interject here, because I think I know exactly what you're saying when you brought up Biden letting in 20 million illegal immigrants. As Bill Ackman stated, a country that lets in 20 million people unvetted, but then cannot remove them, will lose its democratic values. An untenable. Listen, I want due process for everybody. I want constitutional rights where they apply. I am scared and confused right now because we have an untenable situation with immigration caused by Democrats. I don't know what to do. So when you come out and say we are now shackled to a system that will kill our country, I say I don't know that anyone will accept that.
All we can do is tell the left to stop because you're
enemy is
leading us
within.
towards violence.
The enemy-
you are
the enemy
leading
is
the
within.
country towards violence. Fucking stop. Every one of your arguments is wrong and full of every fucking logical fallacy we could think of. Shut the fuck up. Stop arguing for fucking destroying
That's
our
what they
country.
want. So the enemy is within. The people who are destroying this country, the people who are destroying this country are the bootlicking shills. The bootlicking shills who just trust the government, Listen, look, and
Like
this is
fucking
classic.
Democrats with the Biden administration? You guys didn't criticize a single fucking
the
thing they
people-
did.
Guys. No one in this room trusted the government under the Biden administration. You did. One guy did. All right, we're good. The point is, when you say they're bootlicking shills, it's every 4 years the Democrats say you're a bootlicking shill, then 4 years later they're the bootlicking shills.
So just to be clear, the reason why we want to follow the Constitution, even if there are people you don't like, and you can raise a lot of stink about people you don't like and why we should break the law to go after them, is we don't trust in the next 4 years, you're not going to get a president AOC, you're not going to get a president, whoever the fucking worst leftist is that you think. And now that you've made a road through the Constitution, you've made a road for your own back, and they're going to come after you, and they're going to attack your First Amendment rights. You guys all understand this.
We will
implicitly you
erode
understand
whatever
this.
we have
Yeah,
to stop you because you've been eroding it for centuries.
So the real enemies are those who would tell you to give up your country, give up the Constitution, don't follow it.
You
That's
took
what
our
binds
fucking
us.
country with the Biden administration.
Yeah.
This is why I brought up the question before to hear Will. Will's like a very straight-laced forward. I'm a lawyer. I'll answer these questions. That's why I wanted to hear what he had to say about it. Here's my view. You guys know me. When I was young, I despised the Bush administration. Obama came in, and before he did, I was like, everyone's telling me it's going to be different. Then, boy, that motherfucker killed a lot of people and spied on people. And the National Defense Authorization Act indefinite detention provision. I said, holy shit, fuck these people. Then Trump ran against Hillary, and I said, holy fuck, this country is insane. Trump wins, and for the most part, I'm like, I don't care for this shit. Then the Democrats started losing their fucking minds with DEI. acts and weird fucking shit. And then Trump in 2020 said, I got no new wars. I'm setting up a timeline for withdrawal from Afghanistan. I'm getting rid of DEI and government contracting. And I said, actually, this is pretty good. But what did they do to the man for those 4 years? They accused him of being a traitor to this country. Then after this, they start arresting his lawyers. They falsely accuse him of crimes. They claim that a misdemeanor charge, which arguably could be a single count, was 34 felonies. They create a new law in New York so that a woman can say 30 years ago he sexually abused me. I can't prove it. I wore a dress from the future and I had a magic key to open the door. And I'm sitting here watching numerous Trump lawyers get arrested. Now we're in the Trump administration and they're begging me, please, please stick to decorum. Don't arrest lawyers. Don't arrest judges. That motherfucker, you did it first. You did this to us. And now we're upset and saying, what do we do?
Welcome to the Civil War you started.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, guys, give it up. Now, all right, hey, what's your name? Say your name before you go.
I'm Nicholas Steinbrecher, lost and found on Discord. Also representing the Jamcast Discord.
Thank you,
coming,
Nick.
brother.
All right, now our next debater, their name is Cash.
Did you want to respond to that?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to have like the
Cash,
quick
come on.
point.
Did you agree with that unhinged guy?
No, I mean I don't agree with him, obviously, right? Like he's a little more aggressive than I would be, but. I think my substantive point would be that, like, much of your argument is, like, we really need to not open Pandora's box, and I would just say I think Pandora's box has been opened pretty darn
Okay, we can talk about
widely, you know, so.
All right, Cash, you got the mic. The floor is yours.
All right, guys, I'm warning everyone here. I am a libtard. I think I'm one of the only ones in the room.
Oh my gosh, somebody gonna argue with me?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you, Pisco, for inviting
He
me
needs
here.
a break.
Of course. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Grab the mic and hold it up so we can hear you.
So I'm an American exceptionalist. I love this country. I love this Constitution. I think Pisco brought up this point. I mean, I can read out like the amendment that says that people have the rights to due process, regardless if you are a illegal or a citizen. I think that just needs to be cleared up first. That Pisco is the pro-Constitution person here. Every single person, I heard them screaming in the room saying, illegal immigrants don't get due process. That is against the Constitution, just to clarify that first. Second of all, I also think it's important to acknowledge that I trust the U.S. government more so with processing someone that we'd all agree is probably a bad guy, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, than some random, prison in El Salvador. I think we have a good justice system, as many of you guys might disagree. It's crazy to me that you guys disagree with the 6 Republican Supreme Court justices that said that we need to facilitate his return. Rule of law is very important in this country. And I don't know what you guys would be saying. I think Pisco hinted at this. If AOC becomes president and all of a sudden says that the January 6ers are a bigger threat to this country than the illegal immigrants, then deports them with no due process, you guys will all be crying your asses
100%
out.
true. Base.
All right.
Grab the seat, brother. Let me just respond to that. That already happened.
Bullshit. All those people got trials. Everyone in the Jan 6. And then
They all got due process. All of them got due process.
And then these criminal terrorist insurrectionist thugs got
Let
let
me-
out by the criminal in the Oval Office right
Let me
now,
just ask,
illegally occupying the office.
I would just like to ask a procedural question to our lawyer friends here. If evidence is denied to the accused parties, is that due process?
Yeah, it wasn't denied. It would be a violation of due process, but it wasn't actually
That's
denied.
not what I asked.
It wasn't actually denied.
That's not what I asked.
Whether the evidence is admissible, right?
Well, it would depend if it's admissible. It's also it's a whole doctrine on Brady that would apply, and so I would need to know the specific facts. And also, I'm not an expert on Brady.
So,
I'm not a criminal lawyer.
what did we have? 44,000 hours of footage not. That J6
This was a lie, and this was denied on the merits in the courts. So no.
That's not enough.
No. Go for it, Will.
Okay, the actual real, the best argument about the failure of due process in the J6 cases was the fact that change of venue motions got denied. There's no excuse that any of these trials happened in D.C.
Where
in a
the
world
crime
with
was committed?
In a 97% Democratic
Who the
district.
fuck cares? You committed the crime in a place. You do the time there. You do the
Whoa,
trial
whoa,
there.
whoa, whoa! I thought you cared about fair trials.
Wait. So
Whoa! When did that happen?
Whoa!
It's a white guy.
Whoa.
You don't want a fair trial anymore, do you?
Whoa. So doesn't the Constitution specify? Doesn't the Constitution specify that there is a venue provision that when you commit a crime, it shall be tried in the district in which it was committed?
Yeah, but that venue is not defeated by due process and the right to a fair trial.
So there's a presumption. There's a presumption that a jury is able to put aside their bias, their political bias.
Yeah, but that presumption's not absolute. What happens if a black defendant is facing a jury of all white and the prosecutor's excluding?
It's a high burden to get rid of that jury. It's a high burden.
I don't know. I mean, well, think about this. Whoa.
I'm not saying that. No, I'm saying it's a high burden to show that it's racially, unconstitutional.
I mean, you see, if you look at the polling, I want to make this point because this is, I think, the key issue, which I think liberals elide all the time. You look at the polling on, like, for example, whether liberal parents would be happy if their child came home with a conservative partner to marry. They're not. And in fact, in general, this number is higher than in a world where, like, than cross-racial. So, I mean, I'm sorry, like, the way that there's polarization in this country between Republicans and Democrats, which is literally demonstrated by this room, and also a lot of, like, the things, intemperate things you said about, like, the people in this room, is demonstrating that there's
Can I call
not a
that guy
jury of
dipshit
your
'cause he
peers,
asked about
and the
rhetorical questions?
J6ers didn't get fair trials.
Let me ask you another question. Is it due process if the prosecution uses information from after the trial happened to seek a greater sentence on the individual based on speech of the individual?
No, why would it
Not
be?
necessarily,
That's
no.
not. That is not.
It
not a
gets to
violation.
whether or not you have regret, whether or not you. There are factors of sentencing that you're able to, that the judge has discretion to weigh.
Your speech.
That aren't. Yes, yes,
So-
your
so-
speech.
so-
So, for example, I'll give you a case like Martin Shkreli. You guys know Martin Shkreli?
Of course, yes.
So Shkreli, and this is actually, I think Shkreli can be funny sometimes, but he like talked shit about Hillary Clinton when he had his trial or something, and then the judge sentenced him more. Now you might disagree with that, but it just is the case that judges are allowed a great deal of discretion at sentencing, and that's our system.
Okay, can I introduce kind of a new topic a little bit because I feel like we're getting bogged down.
Yeah, you got less than a minute though.
Well,
Go ahead.
let's- let's give him time.
We haven't had a liberal yet the entire night.
That's what I'm saying. We'll talk. Hey, Cash, say
I'm ready, Alex,
something.
I'm ready, I'm sorry.
Gosh,
Keep 'em around.
like a bump on
I
a
think
log.
that Pisco hinted at, and I was kind of talking about this in my opening speech, is that what's important to recognize here is that it sets a precedent. These laws set a bad precedent. I think we should also talk about Mahmoud Khalil. I go to Georgetown. There was a guy that was in our grad department that got deported for supporting Palestine, literally just for supporting Palestine. I just want to hear the conservatives hear that if AOC gets elected and designates Israel as a terrorist state and starts supporting a bunch of pro-Israel people, I'm Jewish, I'm pro-Israel, I'd be afraid of that. You conservatives have opened the floodgates
100%.
for free speech to be completely violated.
Wait.
Because Trump is breaking these
I
laws.
will
it
answer
takes
this.
It takes two to tango with
And
these
let
laws.
Will-
It's
let
incredibly
Will
important.
answer.
I will answer your point. If you manage to get AOC to be president, and she, in her bizarre wisdom, not wisdom, right? But if she decides to
Israel.
say, you know what, if we think the IDF is a terrorist organization, you manage to classify it as such, and then you say Israelis who have advocated on behalf of the IDF, she would have the authority to do so under our laws, right? She could deport Israelis.
She has authority to give them due process.
Wait, bro. So I would argue that a large. I don't know the
this
exact
country.
numbers, but the Trump base is split between anti-interventionist, bye Israel, and pro-Israel. There's a lot of people who are pro-Israel, but when the argument you make about the conservatives, you're going to find a lot of them are more like conservatarian, being like, yeah, I don't give a shit about Israel.
That's his point. He's trying to.
Yeah.
He's
They're not going to disagree. They're going to cheer you on.
no. That's
Okay, so
that's
just
his-
we're engaging in a hypothetical here.
Here's my point. Like,
wait, please.
I guess the fundamental answer is I'm happy with the Khalil deportation. The guy hates our country. He's a guest. He can go home. Like, sorry, you want to go out there and be like,
I think
working
people
for
that
advocating
rioted
for
the
the end of
Capitol
Western
hate this country
civilization?
more than someone criticizing
True.
foreign policy.
Wait.
All the
Fucking
green
days.
all the
I got a
people on
question.
green card that destroyed the Capitol should be deported immediately.
100%.
That is the same
I got a
category.
question. Yeah, but they're
Hating this
citizens.
country,
That's what
hating
it
this
means.
country.
Wait, I
Some of
got
them
a
are not
question. I got a
citizens that
question.
destroyed the Capitol.
I got a question for Will. You said he's a guest in our
Will?
country.
Oh, Will.
Yeah.
Wait. He's a guest in our country. He hates our country, so we could deport him.
Yes.
And that is the State Department has the discretion just to say we revoke your visa. Is there a specific
We'll see.
criteria by which you think they're required, or do you think it's unilateral? No, you're a guest. Get the fuck out.
Under law, honestly, the Secretary of State, there's a provision that was used in this case, which is the Secretary of State said, this guy's continued presence in the country is damaging to American foreign policy.
That is very vague.
Wait. I gotta
AOC's
follow.
president.
I gotta
Just quickly,
follow.
can I quickly say,
I gotta
Sure,
follow.
I understand the slippery slope, but I just think that's the law.
President
But we
AOC
need to change the-
in 2029 says, Stephen Crowder, you are a guest in this
100%,
country.
yep.
Get the fuck out.
True.
He's a US
See, he's a citizen, so that doesn't
Viva
apply.
Fry.
Steven Crowder's on green card.
Viva Fry?
Viva
Fry, better
saying
start enjoying
hypothetically,
poutine again because he's got to go back. I said he's got to enjoy poutine again because he's got to go back to
All right,
Canada.
so here's the question, right?
We love you, Viva.
Under that framework, Will, just a quick question.
Okay.
The First Amendment, relates to speech. It also relates to the religion clauses. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So, under that discretion, what can the State Department say? Muslims, as a general rule, are damaging, prejudicial to our foreign policy interests, and then we're going to get rid of them.
That's an interesting question because I'm not sure. I'm not sure there's a statutory. I guess you could make an argument. I haven't really thought about that one.
Question is, it doesn't matter what the INA says if it violates a right, like the free
Right, but I
exercise
think
clause.
the Supreme Court's already resolved this. There's just not a First Amendment defense to removal,
wait,
right?
wait,
I don't think
of
there
course
is.
there is.
Of course
But-
there we
but-
defend
but-
their right
hold
to
on.
speak on foreign
I
issues.
do
No.
really like this question.
Yes.
Because it also strikes at how do we define religion legally? And if we're dealing with terrorist organizations, would we allow them to use religion as a shield for their extremist ideologies, or do we separate that legally? And
Right, because like that. I mean, that also like. I mean, if religion, free practice of religion, then it's like you can't. I mean, maybe supporting a terrorist organization is a core religious belief.
But
like,
just be
me-
clear. So you're opening the door. Is it Caleb? Sorry, Cash. Sorry. As Cash said, if you're going to allow this big room, this big hole in the First Amendment for certain speech in favor of Hamas, now you're opening the door for if you're a Christian and you're not a citizen, we can deport you just because you're a Christian.
You invaded the Capitol. You're not a citizen.
I want to say to you what you said. Just to answer your question, you said if President AOC. What you described, most people feel happened already with Biden.
And they're wrong. What do you mean? Wait, explain.
No,
They're wrong.
It's not wrong that someone felt a way.
Yeah, but okay, I feel that you're all wrong.
Yeah, I feel that
What
you're wrong.
are you saying?
And I do agree that you feel we're wrong. My point is, you said
You're saying nothing. I don't understand.
you said how would you feel if AOC became president? And
It's a way of
designated
asking the
group?
question.
Obviously, you understand. What I'm trying to point out is the hypocrisy here. That of course,
And
if
what I'm
AOC started
pointing
deporting
out
people
is
that are
the
dangerous,
circumstance you described already happened.
no, it
He's
didn't.
asking you
It
to
actually
actually
did. There were Israeli advocates of like who were opposed to the two-bank solution, and Biden denied their visas simply on the grounds.
Whoa,
that they-
Denying
denial
visa
visa
is
is not
different
the
than
same
someone
as
already in the
deportation.
country.
It's not even that.
that
You
is-
talk
That's a
about-
lie. You're
you
lying
talk about
purposely.
J6.
I am not lying about that.
Talking about
you're
You-
making a
you
false
literally-
equivalency. You're making a false equivalency. Obviously,
Don't accuse me
denying
of
a
lying
visa
when you
is a
say I'm making
different.
a false
This is-
equivalence.
listen, okay,
It is
but
basically the
it's
same. You're intentionally
listen.
misrepresenting a case for political points.
It's not misrepresenting- whoa, 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 whoa.
Cash.
Yes,
He could just be wrong, or he could just disagree with
This is
them.
not the
Sure,
point
sure.
that I was
You're not
making.
lying. You're not lying. I didn't
Let me tell you.
misrepresent.
Let me tell you a story, and I want to hear your reaction to it.
Please.
There was a man and a woman in their mid-40s. Several hours after the event of January 6th, they were in D.C. They live in Maryland. They walked up on the back side of the Capitol where there was no violence and nothing was going on. The doors were open. There were no barricades. They walked up to the building. No police in sight. They walked into the building and looked around taking pictures and walked out after about 3 or 4 minutes. Should they go to prison?
It depends.
On what?
I love that answer. It's the ultimate answer.
It depends.
Sure, I'll say intuitively no, sure. So
Well, they
what's-
fucking did.
Okay, do you know what's,
Why?
great though? Is that they now have due process and they're going to go through. And
My
if a court
point.
finds them, if
My
a court,
point.
If a court
I
finds
understand.
them,
Based.
Yeah.
My point was what you describe about AOC going after people happened to people who bumbled upon the Capitol not knowing what was
Tim,
going on.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If AOC took that case and just deported them instead of getting due process, would you be more mad?
Deported American citizens. I would be mad, yes.
Okay, sorry.
If, I'll give
okay,
you
do
one.
you understand what I'm asking?
If
If there are
Donald
two
Trump
people on
sends
green
Americans
cards, like
to the
walking
CCAT,
out.
I'll be mad.
Well, he says he wants. You agree? He said he wants to do that, right?
And it's wrong to have said it.
Okay, cool.
And it should never happen. And I will always.
So do you
speak out
condemn him
against
for saying it?
it. I condemn. Well, let me.
Multiple times.
Right. Let me say this.
You won't because you're beholden to the
Let me-
administration.
You condemn Omar Garcia for being his
I want
wife.
to try to help people understand things. So let me give you an answer. Piers Morgan asked me the other day, if Joe Biden did the things Trump did, would you praise him for it? And I said, no, probably not. You asked me before the show. I
realize
can't
that's
remember what you said,
unhinged,
something
right?
similar. And I said, the issue is that Donald Trump largely represents my moral worldview, which means I'm tolerant of his failings.
So morals
Joe
mean you
Biden-
could violate the
So you won't
Constitution.
condemn it
That's what you're
because
saying.
you won't condemn it.
Let me finish
You're
what I'm
saying
saying.
your morals, your subjective morals can
Let me
violate the
finish
Constitution.
what
Sorry,
I'm
yes.
saying.
Sorry,
Joe
Tim.
Biden largely represents things that are antithetical to my worldviews. This is not about whether or not someone could violate the Constitution, because I already told you Trump sending Americans to CCAT is a bad thing, and
But you won't condemn him for saying it.
Okay, so you condemn him for violating the Constitution. Just
saying
please
it, for saying
say
it.
yes, and I'll let you finish.
You are loading the question.
I'm not loading the question. It's literally he violated the Constitution. Do you support it? Yes or
we
no?
are talking about if he were to do something, not did he do something.
If he already did something, we're asking you to
If
condemn
Donald Trump sent American citizens to CCAT, I would condemn him for
But
that.
he said he wants to do it. So do you condemn that?
I condemn those statements.
Okay,
yes,
cool.
100%.
I appreciate that.
I also will tell you this: Donald Trump should be criminally investigated for the killing of Abdurrahman al-Awlaki's little sister in Yemen. He gets no free passes from me, but
Based.
we don't know for sure. What we do know is that Obama admitted to it. We know there's been accusations about Trump. My response is accusations warrant investigation, admission warrant something more substantial.
And yet, when it comes to Trump administration officials and their misconduct, like Signalgate, for example, he'll say
That was an inside job. But go ahead.
So what he'll do is
with all due respect, with respect to your statements on Signalgate
Yeah.
and for time,
Oh yeah. Okay.
I just don't. I understand Signalgate, but I don't think it rises to. I laid two things forward. Trump has been accused of murdering a 7-year-old American girl. Obama admitted that his administration killed a 16-year-old American citizen. Neither of them were criminals. I don't want to muddy that with Signalgate because there's such a substantive.
Wait, Tim, I think you got
difference.
sidetracked from your point on Piers Morgan, though. Were you going to finish that?
No.
Why do you think that it's
No,
okay
I-
if Joe
I-
Biden does terrorists, but
I-
Trump doesn't? Can you defend that to me?
That was my point. My
Just
point
because
is that
Trump is more
He did. He said
moral.
because he is.
let me
That's so
explain it.
that's called
No.
moral inconsistency. Sorry,
no,
please,
it's called.
please.
Listen, Donald Trump wants to secure our borders. Our borders should be secure. Donald Trump wants to enforce the law that I think should be enforced properly. Joe Biden was advocating for child sterilization, okay, child sex change operations. I think are pure evil. Joe Biden took classified documents with him and explicitly stated it was because he wanted to write a book that he could sell.
And then he complied with the FBI when they asked him for it. Guess what Trump
And his-
didn't
and his-
do when
and-
he had documents?
And his ghostwriter destroyed the evidence, worried that it was something wrong. My point is this.
His ghostwriter, not Joe Biden, to clarify.
You and everybody else in this country has a moral worldview.
Yes.
It is the utmost naivete to say, no, I don't, I'm on principle. Not true at all. Not true at all.
Yeah, but what that doesn't respond to. All right, come on, calm down. What you're saying doesn't really respond to what I'm asking. If you have morals, are some of those morals to say not fuck up the economy with tariffs or violate the Constitution?
I'm pro-tariff.
You're pro-tariff?
I'm not pro-universal tariffs the way Trump did. I'm pro his selective
So,
tariffs.
just to clarify, I watched that Piers Morgan thing. You said Trump handled the, he asked about like the
B+.
economy doing bad, and then you were like, yeah, if Joe Biden did the exact same thing, I wouldn't defend it. What
So
you're
let
saying
me-
does not
let-
answer
let-
that question at all. You understand that, right?
Let me try and explain it again.
Yes.
The simplest way I can do it without going into the Qatar Turkey pipeline, the Suez Canal, the Crimea, and all of the things we can talk about with Mykola Zlochevsky, Biden's actions overseas. We don't need to get into that.
Sure.
I'll just keep it surface level and
Please.
as simple as possible. Biden is for child sex changes. Trump
So that
opposes it.
means that if he does
Let me
something,
answer your
yes,
question.
Okay, sorry. I
Now,
love you. I promise.
do you want me to give you a 1-hour essay thesis on everything Joe Biden did that I think was criminal, wrong, and he
Hey,
should go to
Biden,
jail
we
for?
get it.
I'm trying to avoid doing that by saying very simply, what Donald Trump represents morally, as for America, is much more in line with my worldview. I can get into great detail on the Burisma scandal if you want me to, or Tony Bobulinski, or Devin Archer.
We should have
I
that
can,
debate,
I
by
can
the
get
way.
into all of
And
that
we don't
shit.
have that much time because
But
we
no,
got to kick
hold
him
on.
off stage.
He wants to hear about the Qatar Turkey pipeline. Okay, so in 2009, the CIA, we don't want to go there, but I absolutely could. For the sake of time, I will just say this: Trump, in my opinion, universal tariffs doesn't make sense. I am skeptical of it, but I am largely biased in favor of Trump's moral worldview and hopeful that his administration has a plan that will bear out positively. That being said, I'm not entirely sure universal tariffs do. Selective tariffs I'm a big fan of because I believe being a manufacturer of skateboards, I can tell you directly as an industry how free trade destroyed an industry and destroyed people's lives.
Okay, sure. I guess.
So
you,
Joe
you did,
Biden.
You did respond, and you just
let me-
reaffirmed what you said.
And now Joe Biden, with all the things he's done that I think are bad, were he to enact universal tariffs, I do not trust him because I believe him to be an amoral crackpot. So I would not give him the benefit of the doubt.
So what you're saying is that you cannot acknowledge when something is bad just because the person might have a good intention.
I
You're saying
literally
because
said the tariffs were done poorly and that I'm skeptical of them.
Okay. No,
okay.
but you said you support universal tariffs, but when Biden doesn't, you don't.
I do not support
No, he
universal
said
tariffs.
selective tariffs. Okay, Cash, get off.
Okay, sorry. Shout out my
Good
friend
job,
Alex
guys.
and Max.
Thank you for coming up. That was
Tim,
great.
Thank you,
thank
Cash. Okay, hold on.
Guys,
Tyler.
I love all of you. You just got to read the Constitution better. Much love.
Okay, thank you. All right, now, is the transgender, do you have balls enough to come up here yet? I know. Well, then come in and tell us about it. Come on, we only have a couple people. Come on, you don't get to come here and not say something. Oh my
Hey,
God!
hey,
You know, it's funny for not
there's-
having a pussy. You sure act like one.
There's a certain amount of no's we'll respect.
I know. Okay. All right. Is that Tyler? Right? Have you been wanting? No. What's your name in the hat? Or did you submit, T-Bone?
No, but my boss did, though.
Okay, well then let's
bring
get the
him up.
black dude. Come on down,
We
T-Bone.
know this guy. We know this guy.
I took a lot of notes. All right.
Yeah, all
So I want to go ahead and I want to go to your point, Alex. You were talking about Lake and Riley,
Yes.
right? But also the entitlement programs. We forgot about that, and about all the money that was spent through all the illegal immigrants. As soon as they came in, they had a bunch of. I don't know if there's a bunch of cards with money on them, but I was at the airport, I believe it was last year, and I had somebody walk up to me, and he was an immigrant, and he said, and he talked to me in Spanish, and I knew a little bit of Spanish, but he gave me a bunch of, here we go. He gave me a bunch of cash and was like, hey, can you help me get to New York? I just need you to buy a ticket. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't do that. But he had a wad of cash, and he had a backpack on his thing, and he had this app on his phone. Now, do you guys remember about the
CBP1?
The CB1 app, right? But anyways, so to my point, you said to close the border, right? That will solve all the issues. But how do you get with the president before that sabotaged our own country and sabotaged our borders, allowing all of these other people to come in, and now you're telling the other president that no, you have to follow some sort of standard.
Sit down. Thank you. Good job. Great
So
job.
there are people will use these examples, and first of all, let's be clear. Some of these benefit programs are state-run. Some of them are federally run. And one of the reasons why these people are given benefits at all is because oftentimes they don't have authorization to work. Okay, when you're applying for asylum, you can get an EAD, but you have to wait a certain amount of time before EAD is an employment authorization document. You have to wait a certain amount of time before you can apply for EAD. And so in the interim, you're literally making it illegal for this person
Yeah, but 20 million people?
What do you mean?
20 million people
Are
are
you talking
applying
about
for this?
So you're saying 20 million people crossed the border illegal and have entered into the country. So I think that number is inflated. It's not true. But I'm going to take it.
Let's say 10. 10 million.
10, 15.
So because it calculates border crossings that some of them are multiple times, and I just don't think it's a true estimate. But not everybody is a beneficiary of those programs. On net, once you give them EADs, these people are putting money into our entitlements. Literally, they're given tax numbers so that they can pay into things like Social Security and
chill, dude. You've been going all
Medicare,
night.
and they're never going to get those benefits from those. So when you let them work, and now I'm not saying that I agree with illegal immigration. I don't agree with illegal immigration, but it's just a function of the fact that otherwise these people are going to be like, I don't know, dying on the street.
Now, remember when we came onto your show in Scrapjaw, and he was talking about how he went over to Springfield, Ohio, right? And there was a bunch of issues, not necessarily what we thought was the problem, which was people were eating dogs and cats, whatever. But he was talking about how there were a bunch of immigrants that had money that were paying for cars that didn't have licenses, that didn't have insurance on these vehicles, and they were wrecking these vehicles. Now, the problem was those vehicles, he would take them back to his, not to a shop, but like the yard where they tow, right? But they couldn't take the vehicles. But why? Because of these issues. So what exactly are we supposed to do when we have a president beforehand that caused all of these issues,
Sure.
and now we have to
I'm going to assume
pay for that?
Yeah.
But it's also a function of we don't have the capacity to solve that. Like the manpower, the labor, and the resources to rectify all those problems.
But we do have the
Exactly.
capacity for like $1 trillion in tax cuts.
Whoa, those are two different things. It's completely unrelated.
So to be clear, like we say that we don't have the capacity, but these tariffs that you say you don't agree with, they've wiped out a ton of wealth in this country. People are against them, and the poll numbers, his economic approval ratings are going down.
I feel like you're dodging the question
But I want to
entirely.
address. Let's assume that everything you're saying in terms of what the previous administration did was wrong, illegal, immoral, however you want to say it. Why is illegal immigration wrong? Can I ask you?
Well, can you do the same thing into another country?
Well,
Can we go to another country?
No,
and
you
say,
can't.
Hey,
But why is it wrong for someone to come into the country legally?
Oh, well, you see, well, exactly, because, hold on, guys. Well, we see why, right? Look at what happened in Italy, all right? You saw what happened on that island. They got ransacked by a bunch of people. There's only 7,500 people that lived there, and there were tens of thousands that just overran that entire island. Look at what's going on in the UK with all the stabbings. Look at what's going on in Canada with all the issues that are going on.
So is I'm hearing crime. I'm hearing economic considerations. I'm hearing fiscal impact. So Trump, for instance, has said he wants immigration. He wants more immigration.
Yes.
He just wants it to be legal, right? You've heard him say that.
Legally.
So, and in this country, we have really low unemployment. record low unemployment even now. Still, the jobs report that we just got was better than expected. So there's a labor shortage in this country in terms of the economic impact. So
That's true.
So,
That's
Trump wants to bring in. Trump has said that he wants to give green cards to people who complete university in this country. So he's at least as Trump says it, he's okay with immigration. He just wants to be done legally.
Exactly.
So
This is a correct
if
way
your
to do
problem, I just want to finish the point, then I'll let you guys go. If your problem with immigration at bottom is that it's illegal and disorderly, then your problem is the illegality, and therefore you should be just against illegal actions by the states.
So let me answer
Actually-
why illegal immigration should be illegal. Right. First, that seems redundant, right? It's illegal immigration is when you come to this country outside of our laws for properly managing influx of new people. The reason why we made it illegal, I can give you a real-world example, which is Sweden, for instance. A lot of these countries are bringing a lot of immigrants in because of their low fertility rates. It's going to cause labor shortages and economic crises. In the 90s, Sweden brought in a bunch of, I believe it was Somali refugees. These refugees were not properly integrated, and this is not to say that they were forced to, it's that the country failed them. What ended up happening was the refugees that came in legally were told, best of luck, welcome to Sweden. So what did they do? They formed enclaves, incidentally, not intentionally. People want to live next to each other because it's familiar, it's easy, and if you're going to get a job and provide a service in your community, speaking the language makes it a lot easier. After 20 years, this resulted in a very serious cultural problem. The children of these refugees were considered Swedes, but in their home country, they were not considered Somali. They had no home to go to, but the Swedish native population would not give them jobs or opportunity. What happened? They created areas of the country that were, I guess say, skeptical of the outside authority. This resulted in police getting attacked. It resulted in inter-gang conflict. There was a grenade thrown in 2017 onto a balcony that killed an 8-year-old British tourist. The culture that grew in these communities was entirely separate and isolated from the Swedish community because they were not properly brought in. And so, why do we make it, we want more legal immigration? We want to make sure that when people do come here legally, because we do have a labor shortage and a fertility crisis, they come in a timely and orderly manner where we can track where they're going, which communities can handle them and which cannot. But when, let's say, even 1 million people come across the border unchecked and we don't know where they're going, this can result in, I should call it intercommunal violence. So you run into conflicts like whether or not the story of cats being eaten is true. You get the local population in Springfield, Ohio, were livid complaining about this. Or you end up with, when I went to Sweden, one of the most fascinating things that I saw was local Swedish guy, who I think was in his 20s, told me he was terrified to go to these neighborhoods because he would be murdered. And I thought that was nuts. And I freely walked about these neighborhoods with no issue. But there was still a fear of interracial and interreligious conflict because of a lack of assimilation and integration. So for economic reasons, for cultural reasons, and to preserve the moral traditions of our country, our democratic values we do think are important, we say, guys, one at a time, right this way, please don't cheat.
Yeah, but so the problem there is, so there's a reason we have these laws. These laws are in place for some of the policy reasons that you've outlined, and the problem is when you violate that, you're both violating the law, but you're infringing on America's sovereignty, right? America passed these laws through our methods, democratically, and it's an expression of American will that says these amount of people can come here and no further, right? You can apply for, a green card under these conditions, but not the other conditions. You can apply for.
He's talking about assimilation, though.
But aren't you arguing that we need to increase legal immigration, right? His argument was, here's all the problems with immigration. You're like, well, if you only have a problem with illegal immigration, then we should just make more of it legal.
Well, what
right?
I'm presenting to him is that Donald Trump has said that there are a lot of benefits to legal immigration, that legal immigration would benefit the economy,
right.
that we do want these people, right?
Agreed.
So I take it as a given that you agree with Trump on that, and that you agree with his policy rationale on that. And so it seems to me like the biggest problem that people have here is they're cutting the line. They're doing something they're not
and they're
supposed
not
to be
paying
doing.
taxes. We have a two-tier justice system. Okay, we only have time for one more guy. So great job, T-Bone. Now the guy in the suit. I know the guy in the suit's been wanting to be here all night. Okay, so you got 1 minute, guys. This is our last one. I'm sorry we didn't get to you. We only have a limited amount of time. time, unless you guys want to do one more after this. But say your name, and you got your 1 minute start.
My name is Andy, and thanks so much for giving me the opportunity. I wanted to address what Tim said regarding the existential crisis of it all and the relations of the Alien Enemies Acts and whether or not that's being applied far enough with Venezuela. I'm going to make some seemingly wild claims because this stuff hasn't been reported yet. But as far as Venezuela's role, the World Social Forums on Migration were 8 global conferences since 2005 that planned the weaponization of migration against the West, sponsored by Venezuela and Cuba. They essentially organized and networked the NGOs and groups that facilitated the migration crisis. So whether or not immigrants are Venezuelan or not, since Venezuelan proxies, by the definition of the OAS and the U.S. Congress, helped facilitate the transfer of these immigrants, aren't all immigrants that came in as a result of a hybrid war effort alien enemies and enemy combatants?
No, by
Take a
definition.
seat, sir.
The Alien Enemies
don't
Act.
think that's right.
No, the Alien Enemies Act allows you to designate like a foreign country, and then only citizens only. No shit, Sherlock. No, but, bro, do you think I just said that invasion isn't in the statute? What do you think I just said? Literally, do you think I just said invasion and physical incursion aren't in the statute? You think I haven't read the statute? No, yeah. So what I said was, but what I said isn't contradicted by what you just said. What I'm saying is that you have to designate a country. That it's invasion. Oh my god. It does. Alien Enemies Act. You have to designate a country. So and that country is, you can deport, detain, and send out people of that country, citizens of that country, whether they're here legally or not. A foreign entity, yeah, but you have to designate one. So the proclamation that Trump issued only applies to Venezuelan nationals by definition. And so, no, it doesn't apply for
I
everyone.
understand that. What I'm arguing is that other immigrants, by virtue of whether they're Venezuelan or not, are playing a part as weapons in Venezuela's hybrid war.
So
against
do you think
the
that
United States.
so then you'd have to designate every country as being part of the invasion? And
Then so be it.
Okay,
because
that's not what the current proclamation says. So when Trump wants to say that the whole world is invading us and issue a proclamation to that effect, I'll address it.
I mean, I think the problem is that's so attenuated from the underlying.
100%.
Right, like, is that, and also it would swallow up every other part of immigration law. Like, basically, it would.
You could deport anyone here legally or illegally for any reason.
Right. So I think that as a result, I think that. I don't even know if we actually disagree that much.
No,
Get 'em out.
I guess we probably disagree on whether or not there is a
Deport
predatory
everybody,
incursion.
even Americans, white people, Christians. Everyone's got to go. Nobody can stay.
But just be clear, the alien, so if the Supreme Court were to uphold Trump's power under the Alien Enemies Act in this case, he could deport any Venezuelan, whether they're here legally or not. So if they're here legally, you could get rid of them too. The Alien Enemies Act is a very powerful ability for the administration to get rid of any alien, and that it means any non-citizen, really.
I do think that, just real quick, we can interpret however the powers that be interpret. I mean, whoever's in charge interprets it the way they want, they enforce it the way they want. And I really do feel like whenever we have these debates, and I feel it's a lot on the culture war, I'm like, why we're sitting here acting like we don't understand these laws all the time, because maybe we don't. 2 different sides, 3 different sides, different political factions, all saying, no, the law means this, no, the law means that. And it's really, at its core, my moral worldview would be this, no, my moral worldview would be this, and the law is less material to the argument.
Ouch.
Let's say that I cede the fact that, okay, it applies only to Venezuela. Well, then all of their proxies, which, again, you can demonstrate that these groups that facilitated migration are, under U.S. and OAS definitions, proxies of foreign enemy states. Shouldn't they be prosecuted and jailed under the...
For what crimes?
For Foreign Agent Registration Act? They're acting as proxies of foreign governments and not stating it.
So-
Seditious conspiracy, RICO, since this is a hybrid war that carries all 12 dimensions of the hybrid war. I shared some research beforehand, and I hope you look through
so
it. You can always
under
touch
FARA,
base.
you need to have so if you have specific evidence that they're failing to register and engage in some kind of lobbying effort, and then you can point to specific individuals, I guess. FARA also applies not just to other countries, but to foreign principals, and so that can include like one of the reasons why we should have the Burisma conversation at some point is that Burisma would be considered a foreign principal under FARA, and that's one of the issues of the Hunter Biden situation. And so I can see a cognizable case if you can show me the evidence that the specific individuals involved are failing to register as foreign agents.
Citizensintelligence.net has a downloadable PDF with 600 sources, about 150 pages long, and it's free along with network maps.
Can I ask about the moon necklace?
It's a pig tusk from Vanuatu. Pigs are considered sacred there because this is like mining your own pig coin. The more they curl, the more they're worth. So they pull the
awesome.
top teeth so the pig's tusks continue to curl. And if you got a pig with a triple curled tusk, it costs somebody a pig just to take a look at it. There's a YouTube thing called Vanuatu's Piggy Bank that's like a 15-minute Australian
This guy
special.
is insane. Okay, all right, get off stage.
Thank you,
wait,
thank you.
we're almost done. The guy with the sunglasses in the back. Well, you've been looking at me all night. Come on down. What do you do?
Took
1
the
minute.
microphone already, though.
I know, but I'll just hand him mine. What do you just come up here real quick? What you've been looking at me creepy? You in the so one guy in the sunglasses.
Yep.
Hurry up. We only got 1 minute. I can already tell this guy's gonna be weird. Here, take my mic. What do you want to say? Stand back there.
I do have a quick question about
You have one question.
okay, constitutional rights. I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, but if an illegal immigrant were to come here, would they have the constitutional right, like Second Amendment rights, to buy firearms?
I think they do, yeah. The Constitution's very clear when it refers to persons and when it refers to citizens. So we had this conversation. I think you agreed with it.
I mean, and it could be an issue of how they've changed. Like when the 14th Amendment was made, it draws a distinction between the rights of persons and the rights of citizens. But I would also add that creates an abortion issue for you if you do accept that argument.
I'm not actually sure either of you are right about this.
Wait, so for example, it says the security of so the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, and that's the people, and other parts in the Constitution, including the requirements for president to run for president, the requirements for Congress. It refers to U.S. citizens, and in the privileges or immunities clause of the 14th Amendment, which is what he was referencing, it refers to.
Okay, I hear all that, right? Clearly, under current law, we have a lot of restrictions on aliens and what they can say that would infringe the First Amendment if applied to citizens.
I think that's up to. I don't know about
espousing support for terrorism is sufficient to get you your.
Well, that's being litigated right now with the Mahmoud Khalil case.
Right, but I think you're going to lose.
Well, we'll
that
see.
one,
We'll
sorry.
see.
But my point being that if that's true, then I think you could say that an illegal alien could not be imprisoned for a crime that would not be a crime for an American citizen, but they could be deported.
Interesting.
Right? You could make it a condition of their residence.
One of the big problems with having this carve out and saying that rights don't apply to illegal immigrants, then the rule, that exception swallows the rule, and now all of a sudden you're going to be saying, and I hope you don't say it, is are you allowed to search without a warrant, in an unreasonable search, let's say, of an illegal immigrant's house because they don't have Fourth Amendment rights?
No.
No, but that's a right of the person against the government doing something to them, right? In the same way that you can't imprison in the same reason that you can't imprison an illegal alien without due process, but you can deport them.
Yeah, but the Second Amendment has been interpreted by the Supreme Court to the delight of gun owners to be an individual right, right? That's the big win in Heller, is it's not just a militia-based right. It's an individual right to bear arms.
But so is the right to free speech.
So is the right to free speech is as well. And so if there's an individual rights component to the Fourth Amendment that protects you against unreasonable searches and seizures, surely, and it applies to people and persons, and there's a distinction between persons and citizens in the Constitution, we should read that into the Second Amendment.
But I don't think that the analogy doesn't work.
Why
because
not?
The distinction that we're always talking about in these First Amendment cases and in the Second Amendment cases is this criminal punishment versus removal.
Correct.
And I don't think that is even in the ballpark of what's going on in the Fourth Amendment, right?
So do you think, but hang on a second. So we're not just talking about criminal punishment when it comes to immigration matters. So the First Amendment, for example, applies to if you want to get a liquor license and you're a Trump supporter, imagine that the administration says something, or the Democrat administration says, you don't get a liquor license if you support Trump. Or you guys complain about the IRS, right? So let's say that the IRS institutes a policy that says something like, we're only going to do IRS audits of Trump supporters, right? Let's say they instituted that policy. So they didn't do that policy. They didn't. But let's assume.
De facto, that's what
Chill.
Biden
Take the hypo, right, bro? Don't be less mad, all right? Jesus Christ.
All right, let him finish, guys. We're about to end this. Let Pisco finish.
That's a situation in which an investigation isn't a criminal punishment. An investigation isn't a criminal punishment. The denial of a license isn't a criminal punishment. But these rights still have, First Amendment, for example, still has purchase, even though it's not a criminal punishment. The Second Amendment, there could be some gun legislation that doesn't apply in the criminal context. It would still have purchase.
I want to just add, I do think I would like to hear a clear answer from the courts on this. Does the people mean the body of citizens, or does it mean all persons? Because when they did draft the 14th Amendment, it draws a distinction between what makes someone a citizen and what rights a person has. They're distinct.
I'm pretty sure non-citizens are protected under the 14th Amendment, under current
If it
under
wasn't-
Supreme Court precedent.
If it wasn't that
Yeah.
way, you could, as a punishment, torture non-citizens.
And I
It would
think
be
that's
constitutional.
right. Well,
Oh,
that's-
gosh.
Anyway.
All right, we're going to end on that, guys. Thank you guys so much. Give it up for yourselves. This was the first pilot episode of the Culture War Live. Give it up for Pisco, or I don't know if Raymond would say something. Give it up for Will Chamberlain, our debaters, and, of course, Tim.
I'm here to say goodbye to everyone. It was a beautiful show. Shout out Tim. Fucking rocking and rolling. Tim, Culture War IRL. Pisco, the gentleman from the left, who came on the show. We appreciate you, sir. Yeah, Eddie has a couple guys in the crowd, and one of the gentlemen came up there, Mr. Cash, so that's fucking rock and rolling. We love that. Next time, we want more lefties. If you're watching, feel free to come in. It's a good time.
Absolutely.
The better debates, the better, right?
Yes, everybody, thank you all so much for being here. Share the show with everyone, smash the like button, subscribe. You can follow me on X and Instagram at TimCast. You guys want a quick shout-outs for who you are, where they can find you?
Primetime 99, Alex Stein, Pip on a Blimp, on Twitter, X, YouTube. Follow Primetime with Alex Stein.
Will Chamberlain at Will Chamberlain on Twitter, and the Article 3 Project, article3project.org.
Pisco Liddy on Twitter and Pisco's Hour on YouTube.
This was fucking awesome.
This was fun.
Dude, it was good time.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for coming.